Section 101. The bar was so dimly lit that the smudges of her makeup were barely visible, yet someone still managed to see through them. Catherine berated herself inwardly, then forced calm with the kind of steadiness only a seasoned thief could muster. "I don't know why you want Bruce Wayne's fingerprints," she said, keeping her voice level, "but you definitely need his thumbprint. Your math's off. There are only 4 fingerprints." The man across from her raised an eyebrow. "I'll count to 10 right now to show you how good my math is," he said coolly. A subordinate stepped forward, produced a gun, and pressed the barrel to Catherine's temple. "All right," Catherine said, and raised her hands. Before the man could pull the trigger, a black dart with a flashing red light whistled through the window and stuck to the handgun. The red light flared. The weapon clicked as if a lock had engaged. No matter how the subordinate tried to fire it, the gun wouldn't discharge. "What?" The room went white with shock. A moment later, the door exploded inward and a shadow filled the entrance. Batman! Catherine's breath caught. Operating in Gotham, she knew the legend of Batman well enough, though for a heartbeat, she was relieved it wasn't Fang who'd come through that door. The figure's presence cut the room like a blade. The black cape flared, the silhouette sealed the light, and the air itself seemed to chill. The henchman lunged, panic replacing bravado. Batman met them like a force of nature. He moved with brutal economy. One hand chop and the first attacker slumped out cold. A flurry of blows, a throat slap, a foot to a temple. Each opponent went down without bloodshed or broken bones. He was fast and precise, the bat armor shrugging off thrown tables and punches while he delivered non-lethal but incapacitating blows. Catherine watched, stunned. He was a gust of motion, each strike measured and efficient. Her contact barked into an earpiece, frantic. "Bane, come save me." Silence answered. Then, over the feed, a voice that could have been from a machine said only, "Timing's off. The distance is too great. You're on your own." The man at Catherine's table tried to fight back, but a single quick kick from Batman dropped him at her feet. She watched the dark figure pick his way through the room and thought of how unfamiliar that fighting style felt. So like Bruce Wayne's, yet owned in a different, harsher school. Batman moved to the man who'd been trying to make himself useful to Daggett. After a few terse maneuvers, enough to break fingers, he had the man crying and sniffling, spilling everything. The puppet's name was John Daggett, a man who rubbed shoulders at high society banquets and bought influence with contracts and favors. He was the mastermind. The henchman had been a disposable pawn. With that, Batman discarded him like trash and melted back into shadow. This time, Catherine didn't let him vanish so easily. She called after him, "Batman, wait!" He stopped and turned. Up close, the voice was softer, almost wary. "What is it?" "You're Bruce Wayne, aren't you?" she said, struggling between accusation and flattery. "Your style, your technique. I've fought Bruce Wayne before. You're the same." Batman didn't answer directly. "There are many dangerous people in this world," he said instead. Catherine shook her head. "I was hired by Daggett. I'm not part of this personally. He promised me a program, the History Eradication Program, to wipe my criminal records. He lied, I think. Whatever you want, take it." She opened her palm and handed over several small forensic slips. "These are Bruce Wayne's fingerprints. Consider them returned." Batman took them without ceremony. "They don't belong to you," he said briefly. "They'll need to be destroyed." Then, without another word, he was gone. Only the stirred air and a cape's whisper remained. Catherine stood in the doorway, stunned at how completely such a large presence could disappear. Later that night, Bruce returned to Wayne Manor and told Alfred everything. "Do we need to tell Master Gao Li?" Alfred asked. "He's one of the potential targets. The enemy might move against him." Bruce frowned at the name. If Daggett or his associates targeted Gao Li, it might be a setup. Alfred left to dig deeper. The next day, Alfred came back with research. "There are rumors about Bane you should see," he said, handing Bruce a dossier. His tone was unusually grave. Bruce read. The reports matched what Alfred had said. Bane was born in a pit, a living hell of a prison where men were left to die. Some who were sent there were broken, a few rose from it, and Bane had escaped into the world. Afterward, he had trained under Ra's al Ghul, but was later expelled. Even Ra's, dangerous and single-minded himself, had found Bane too extreme. Alfred's warning was simple and cold. Someone whom Ra's al Ghul expelled for being too extreme could not be underestimated. The man's reputation for raw, overwhelming strength made reliable intelligence scarce. Every encounter ended in the other side's death, leaving only whispers. Bruce listened, then let a hint of irony cross his face. With the bat armor, a single punch can deliver roughly a ton of force, he said. That would be immense strength to anyone not wearing this suit. Alfred did not push him. He respected Bruce's pragmatism but remained cautious. Immense is vague. It could be exaggeration. It could mean something else entirely. I'll continue to monitor and prepare. Don't be reckless, Bruce said. Neither of us underestimates an opponent. Alfred's instincts would not be calmed. Better safe than sorry. I'll take steps to guard against him. Somehow, I have the feeling this will be a battle we can't ignore. The premonition came sooner than either of them expected. Less than a week later, the man called Bane and his followers seized control of the Gotham City Stock Exchange. The news shattered the city. In a place run by capital and contracts, the takeover was an affront that demanded immediate, massive response. Notify all units, patrol cars, officers on duty, every off-duty officer. Call them all in. The command echoed through the precinct as Gotham braced itself for a confrontation that would test both armor and resolve. Section 102 Gordon, acting as director, led the task force himself, driving everyone into motion. Facing such a dangerous criminal organization, he could not afford to let his guard down. He had to muster every available resource from the start. Inside the Gotham Stock Exchange, a hulking bald man over 2 meters tall stood over a trembling trader. Muscles corded his body. He wore a mask with tubes feeding some unknown liquid into him. The trader, forcing his voice, stammered, "This is a stock exchange. There's no cash here for you to steal." "Really? Then what are you doing here?" Bane replied indifferently, and with a casual strike, the trader exploded into a spray of minced flesh beneath the terrible force. "Ah!" Screams echoed through the room. Everyone froze at the horrific sight. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. An ordinary person, alive one moment, smashed like jelly the next. The force of it defied belief. Hostages were splattered with fragments of organs and bone. Many vomited on the spot. Bane, unmoved, walked to a computer as if nothing had happened and barked at his subordinates. "Is the program running? Are Deathstroke's fingerprints correct?" "They're correct, but," a subordinate answered, trembling, "it'll still take time to run the encrypted trading routine." Catherine had failed to provide Bruce Wayne's fingerprints, but they had not relied on a single plan. If Catwoman proved useless, they had a backup, the world-renowned mercenary, Deathstroke. True to form, Deathstroke had gotten what they needed. Retrieving usable fingerprints was child's play for a professional of his caliber. If he'd been able to locate Gao Li Wayne, he might have done both jobs. Gao Li was operating Fadian Group in Metropolis under a false identity and appearance, so it was not surprising Deathstroke hadn't tracked him down. In fact, it might have been a stroke of luck that Deathstroke hadn't actually encountered Gao Li. Otherwise, he might have been taken out by Gao Li's counterattack long ago. Then find a way to speed it up. "We must bankrupt Wayne Enterprises today to move the rest of the plan forward," Bane ordered. A low voice answered from the ceiling. "That's probably impossible." No sooner had the words left his mouth than the lights in the stock exchange died. Computers lost power. The encrypted trading program shut down. "Batman's here. He cut the backup power. He's down the laptops too." Bane scanned the room and saw that even self-powered electronics had suffered some invisible attack. Everything was shorting out. In the sudden darkness, Bruce descended like a god of death. He struck the first enemy like lightning. Thunderous fists met the man, and he crumpled, unconscious, the black gauntlets producing a deadly whoosh. 1 second later, Bruce was already beside the next assailant, laid low by a devastating palm strike. The bat armor allowed him to see in the dark and move with blinding speed. His attacks fell like a storm in the night. Bane's men tried to retaliate. Daggers flashed, shots rang out, but they were quickly overwhelmed. As Gao Li had predicted in development, with the bat armor, Bruce could cut through the League of Shadows as if it were the same confrontation with Ra's al Ghul. Bang! 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 The stock exchange became a chaos of blows. Bruce, the night's judge, began purging the evil from the dark. Bane felt it. The legend was true. That was Batman, the Dark Knight of Gotham and the nightmare of criminals. Not bad strength, Bane said, narrowing his eyes. He increased the venom flow through the mask's tubes. Bruce, still in the thick of the fight, swung iron fists and moved like the wind. The black armor gleamed coldly against muzzle flashes. Though the League's remnants were highly trained, they simply could not match him. Each of Bruce's steps felt like an earthquake. His iron boots reverberated through the exchange. Batarangs flashed like dark arrows, launched whenever the opportunity presented itself. Close-range opponents fell quickly. The remaining threats were scattered, distant stragglers. A whistling sound cut the dark as batarangs flew, striking enemies who couldn't see them coming. The League's men screamed as Bruce's accuracy and speed turned the room into a slaughterhouse. Even those who believed in the League trembled now. This was Batman's gift, cold, indiscriminate terror for criminals. His armor shimmered in the dark like the presence of death itself. "Damn it! Why is the gap so big?" Someone cried. One by one, the League fell. The battle cries turned into the clang of armor and the hush of bodies hitting the floor. In just a few moments, Bruce had dispatched nearly all of Bane's men. "Very impressive," Bane clapped, his hands thudding like a drum. His applause was deep and confident, as if the fallen ninjas meant nothing to him. He cared little whether they aided him. He was convinced he alone could handle Batman. "You're the last one, Bane," Bruce said coolly as he closed in. Batman's stealth was flawless. Bane, prepared for a strike, waited. If the Dark Knight attempted a ranged attack, Bane didn't care. Weak batarangs could never pierce his carapace. Sure enough, Bruce struck from behind. Bane hadn't detected him until the blow landed. The impact felt as if he'd punched a ton, but nothing happened. "This feels like hitting a block of iron," Bruce thought, pupils narrowing as he realized the hit had barely shifted Bane. Bane, sensing the attack through the jolt, answered, "My turn." With a thunderous boom, he delivered a single, devastating punch. Bruce flew like a cannonball and crashed through the stock exchange wall. Boom! Police outside heard the explosion. The north wall collapsed, leaving a gaping hole. A dark figure shot out, buried under rubble, and lay unmoving. Is that... People were too stunned to be sure it was Batman. More importantly, Bane stepped through the breach, drawing everyone's attention. The Bat-Armor systems began to execute preset emergency routines, initiating vital signs detection, attempting first wake-up, attempting second wake-up, activating distress signal, sending address, Fadian group. The AI chip in the armor ran programs Gowley had preloaded, but Bruce saw none of it, because he had blacked out. Even Bruce could not avoid losing consciousness after such a brutal, unexpected blow. His earlier adversaries, Scarecrow, Joker, Ra's al Ghul, had been cunning or deadly, but within his range. Bane was different, born with an extraordinary physiology and the ability to tolerate venom injections that made him almost superhuman. For most people, venom was a deadly toxin. For Bane, it was an enhancer that pushed his strength, speed, and endurance to monstrous levels. Depending on the dose, it could raise his lifting capacity to 95 tons in a stable state. Driven further, he had once exceeded 120 tons, at the cost of losing his sanity and destroying testing facilities. His baseline strength, even without drugs, had already allowed him to break steel bindings and deform iron doors. Bane was, without question, the strongest foe Bruce had ever faced. Boom, boom, boom. Sound built and built in Bruce's ears as consciousness slowly returned. He blinked, groggy. "What am I?" he muttered, struggling to move. A crushing pain pressed across his chest. Section 103, Bruce looked down and stared. A fist print was actually dented into the surface of the bat armor that had always been unusually strong. Was that an attack from Bane? Everything clicked into place. He had been hit by Bane, knocked flying with a single punch. Just the slight deformation in the armor was enough to show how terrifying Bane's strength was. A single blow had temporarily incapacitated Batman. But another question nagged him. Why hadn't Bane finished him off? The answer was in the roar outside, though Bruce, buried under rubble, couldn't see it. After sending Batman flying, Bane had collided with the police, and their confrontation erupted instantly. Alarms wailed between the skyscrapers. The city felt like a battlefield, and it was Bane's stage. In the burning streets, he stood like a colossus, eyes cold, every muscle bulging beneath brown skin that seemed as hard as steel. With venom coursing through him, Bane had become an immovable fortress. "Don't be afraid. He's alone. His men are gone. We have the advantage." The Gotham police formed a nervous defensive line. Bane's footfall made the ground tremble. A single step felt like the city's heart being stamped on. Despite their numbers, they looked tiny beside him. "Hands on your heads! Get down, or we will!" Before the warning finished, Bane surged forward and Gordon, forced by the momentum, barked the order. "Fire!" A hail of bullets struck Bane, ringing like metal on metal. The chiefs gaped in disbelief. His body took the impacts as if they were raindrops. Bullets glanced off his skin without causing damage. This wasn't armor, it was a human body, and that realization shut the police into stunned silence. They kept firing, though it accomplished nothing. Bane snorted at their desperate fusillade. Then, with a casual sweep of his arm, he brought down a thick wall. Rubble flew like shrapnel, wounding officers who scrambled back in shock. He didn't wait for them to recover. He flipped a patrol car as if it were a toy and hurled it into the gathered officers. It exploded in flame. "Can we really deal with this?" "Call in the army." "How long will that take?" Faces went white. Bane's physique was offense and defense rolled into one, indestructible, implacable. He stomped forward in giant strides, raised a fist, and punched so hard a wall disintegrated into shards that cut through several officers. He tore a parked truck from its place, lifted it like a child's tricycle, and hurled it at the building sheltering the police. Bricks and glass shattered. The structure groaned as people fled. Gordon tried to rally them. "Regroup, fall back." But Bane gave them no respite. He swung and surged like a battering ram, obliterating equipment, tearing vehicles apart. Exhausted officers were thrown aside. Small arms fire, grenades, even rockets made only temporary interruptions. The first rocket that struck had sent Bane sprawling, but the triumph was short-lived. Gordon's desperate shot had seemed to work. A rocket hit, Bane fell, and for a heartbeat, hope flickered. Then the behemoth rose, roaring, apparently unfazed. He injected more venom and came back with even greater fury, sweeping everything in his path. The police's weapons and their courage were inadequate. Scattered bursts and explosions did little more than slow him for a moment. "It's over," someone muttered. Fear and despair washed over the scene. Gordon's thoughts turned to Gotham's masked defenders. Where was Fang? And Batman? Could he stop this? The operator of the city's vigilance seemed a distant hope. Then Bruce pushed aside the rubble. He staggered to his feet and snapped open the briefcase, unfolding the GX-05 Cerberus Gatling. The sight of Batman brought a ripple of relief. Had that black shadow been him all along? This time, Bruce didn't use tranquilizer darts. Having felt Bane's strength firsthand, he knew such weapons would be useless. He opened fire in live-fire mode. 30 armor-piercing rounds hammered into Bane in a heartbeat. Even so, the rounds did not pierce. Bane strode through the barrage, unflinching, then charged. He slammed into Batman, kicked, and forced Bruce into a desperate dance of movement. Bruce's martial skill let him avoid a killing blow, but he still took several glancing hits. Cracks began to spider across the surface of the bat armor. Witnesses watched Batman's condition slide from hope to dread. His advantage evaporated. He was bleeding into a deeper deficit. The crowd's spirits plummeted. "Where is Fang?" They whispered. "Hurry, save him." As if answering the prayer, a white figure descended from the sky. I checked sources. One site states Bane's normal limit is 95 tons and his peak limit 120 tons. Wikipedia doesn't give figures. The fandom page lists 3-4 tons, but that's user-edited. DC's official page only says he's got Superman-like strength, with no numbers. I don't know why the disparity is so huge, but my outlines and drafts for later chapters were written using the first set of numbers I found. The difference is too large to change now, so I'll stick with that data. Chapter 124, the first team-up of Fang and Batman. When the white figure finally stopped moving, everyone could see him clearly. The newcomer was encased in white bio-armor from head to toe, each plate like a hard scale, gleaming with a cold, almost futuristic light. It was Fang, the long-missing vigilante. "Fang! It's Fang! Fang came to save us! We're saved!" The officers of the GCPD erupted with relief. Many were near tears, forgetting the times they'd once hunted Fang. They weren't inconsistent, That desperation they had just felt against Bane had shredded every psychological defense. That absolute, overwhelming power had left them helpless. They'd seen Batman move earlier and clung to a sliver of hope, but now Batman was repeatedly on the brink of death at Bane's hands. Fang was the only possible reversal. Rumors said he was stronger than Batman. Seeing him appear made everyone understand why a masked vigilante like Fang was necessary, a last resort against enemies ordinary force couldn't handle. Could that be Bane? Gao Li squinted at the hulking figure. He'd rushed to Gotham immediately after receiving the Bat Armor's distress signal. With Fang's arrival, Bane loosened his grip on Batman for the first time, giving Bruce a short chance to catch his breath. You must be Fang, then. The only two masked men in Gotham on the scene. Perfect. I'll kill you both. Bane grinned savagely. Gao Li ignored the taunt and looked at Bruce. Batman, you all right? Humph. I'm fine. Still able to fight, Bruce answered, breathing hard. Good, Gao Li nodded. But I heard you have heavy firepower. Use it on Bane now. Bruce wasn't surprised Gao Li knew about his arsenal. He'd used the Batmobile, Batcycle, and Batplane in the past. I used special tranquilizer rounds before, but they'd probably be useless against him. If I switched to live rounds, I might kill him. Gao Li stared. This wasn't the time to debate a no-kill rule. Are you out of your mind? If you don't kill Bane, he'll just kill more people. Think about the innocents. Bruce clenched his fists and looked at the destruction around them. For a moment, Gao Li's words cut through him. He hadn't always been rigid about lethal force. The early Bruce had been influenced by people like Gao Li. And the truth was he simply hadn't had the time to bring in the Batwing until now. He'd been knocked out earlier, the police had collapsed, and Bane had been hunting him non-stop. Bruce wasn't refusing action. He'd been unable to act. Are you treating me like heir, you scoundrels? Bane charged, furious at being ignored. Quiet. We're discussing strategy, Gao Li said, and without hesitation tapped Fang's tail 3 times. The dinosaur-shaped armor's eyes flared red and energy swirled at Gao Li's feet. Fang, maximum drive. Gao Li leapt in a flash of light. The massive dinosaur head aura converged and delivered a crushing kick to the charging Bane. Bane flew back, smashing into rubble and kicking up a cloud of dust. Fine, I'll call in the Batwing and try it. Whether it kills him can be decided after the fight. Bruce made his decision then. Using the moment when Fang had sent Bane flying, he engaged the Batwing's autopilot. A massive all-black warplane tore through the sky. From a distance, Bane rose, coughing blood. Not bad. How many times can you do that? He barked. Who knows? Maybe we can hit you a dozen times and grind you down, Gao Li said, though inwardly he was shaking. Fang's maximum drive had barely phased Bane. The Batwing lit the sky and the autopilot locked onto Bane. A barrage of missiles screamed toward him, but they missed. Bane moved with astonishing speed, dodging them like a shadow. Explosions lit the skyline, rubble rained down, but not a single missile struck him. For a flying warplane, Bane was a small, extremely mobile target among towering buildings. Do you think your toys can touch me? Bane roared and hurled a streetlight pole at the Batwing like a javelin. The pole shattered the sound barrier and slammed into the wing with a thunderous crack. Warning, wing damage, the Batwing warned as it shuddered. The AI fought to stabilize the crippled aircraft, but Bane launched himself up, vaulting off walls and rooftops to reach the plane. He struck the fuselage with a fist that sounded metallic, even against the Batwing. The control systems began to fail. Bruce tried to wrest control remotely, but Bane pounded the aircraft again and again. The Batwing, a technological marvel, buckled under the blows and began to burn and break apart in the air. Everyone watched helplessly as it plummeted, realizing that even the military might do little against Bane. Heavy firepower isn't great for highly mobile, small targets. Even the Gutswing might struggle. Gao Li frowned, simulating the battle in his head. The Gutswing had superior attack capability, but if you couldn't land a hit, it was useless. Bane's raw power and agility turned thrown projectiles, streetlights, cars, chunks of concrete, into hyper-fast weapons. Large aircraft became easy targets. The urban canyon of skyscrapers only reduced maneuverability further. No choice. I haven't had time to debug this, but throwing it into actual combat might be the only test, Gao Li thought as Bane dropped down and stalked toward them like a demon. Batman, looks like we have to team up for the first time. Don't die, okay? Gao Li said. Bruce's reply was short and grim. You too. Beast, come, Gao Li called, and a small wolf-shaped memory bounded into his hand. From the look of things, Fang's rider kick and brute force alone weren't enough right now. Gao Li didn't plan to use anything beyond his Gaia memory unless forced. What he needed was time. The beast memory, with strong recovery and impressive combat capability, was perfect for buying that time. Gao Li swapped the dinosaur memory for the small wolf memory and transformed into a new form, entirely blue. Bruce felt a flash of pain, remembering the kick he'd taken the first time he'd faced Fang. Ready to die? Bane snarled and charged. His fist came toward Bruce like a cannonball. Bruce used his agility to evade and returned a precise batarang, but Bane's skin was stone-hard. The projectile only left a shallow scratch. Bane came again, his fists like hammers striking Bruce and Gao Li. Gao Li threw himself against the onslaught. A collision felt like a bomb going off in his arm. His bio-armor cracked under the force. Tsk! It felt like my bones and flesh nearly shattered. What obscene strength is this? He grunted. Fortunately, the beast form's recovery was astonishing. The armor's damage healed almost instantly. No time for complaints. Back into the fight. The GCPD watched in stunned silence. Each collision between the three was accompanied by earth-shaking impact. Batman and Fang alternated between separation and cooperation, probing for an opening. Gao Li's agility let him dodge and then hammer back. His punches landed like iron mallets, each blow delivering tremendous force. They kept pressing, looking for the moment when Bane's invulnerability might crack. Section 105, Bane's skin was as hard as rock, unharmed and only more enraged. Useless, 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 he snarled. He struck back with furious force, his punches whistling through the air. Fang and Bruce had to concentrate entirely on dodging and defending. Bruce's bat armor didn't recover like the beast armor did. It was already tattered from the fight. Bruce rolled aside as Bane swung. Behind him, Fang's fists glowed brilliant blue. "Beast! Maximum drive!" Fang shouted. He landed a powerful rider punch into Bane's waist. The blow staggered the giant, forcing him back a few steps and drawing a thin line of blood from his nose and mouth, evidence of internal damage. Bane merely wiped it away and charged on like a berserker. The clashes kept sounding like earthquakes. A massive fist smashed into Fang, who failed to dodge and was sent flying, crashing into the street some distance away. Bruce swung the destroyer and charged to distract Bane. Die! Bane turned and kicked with brutal force, sending Bruce crashing into a building. He couldn't get up. The Gotham officers held their breath. Had their last hope been broken? Then Gordon's shout cut through the chaos. A golden beam of light flew in from afar and landed precisely where Fang was. The light circled once and settled into Fang's outstretched hand. He held a golden, pterodactyl-shaped memory with the characters "glitter" stamped on it. Fang's lips curved. He had timed the distraction with Batman to buy this moment while the memory flew from Fadian Group's lab. This glittering memory, the shining memory, was derived from a far more advanced, almost divine origin. It was no longer merely a Gaia memory. Its power reached a higher, nearly universe-level authority, an Akashi-class memory, if you will. If this series had a final form, Fang thought, this would be it. Fang detached the beast memory, clicked the shining memory into place, and shouted, "Transform! Glitter!" A sacred hymn rose as a pillar of light enveloped him. The glow felt solemn and awe-inspiring. Even the Gotham officers felt an inexplicable urge to kneel and repent under it. Bruce, grimacing in pain but forcing himself up, stared in horror. Fang's true strength, hidden deep beneath the surface, was far more terrifying than anyone had imagined. Bane frowned, disgusted. From his experience, no matter what gadgets Batman and Fang used, they hadn't been threats, and exposing venom tubes would be suicide against a precise sniper. All of Bane's venom delivery was embedded in hardened equipment, multiplied and protected. He believed himself invincible. Still, he watched as a golden yellow hand extended from the pillar of light and effortlessly caught his incoming blow. The light faded to reveal a golden knight in a cape. Bane froze, incredulous. His outrageous punching power, enough to maim on a single hit, had been received as casually as if Fang were toying with him. To be countered so easily implied a strength far beyond his own. "Impossible," he roared. "Absolutely impossible." He kicked again, putting everything into the strike. Leg power that far surpassed his punches. The impact produced a metallic clang. Bane felt a sharp, unfamiliar pain, as if he'd struck an indestructible plate, and he staggered back several steps to look at Fang, who had not budged an inch. Fang beckoned, almost bored. "Is that all? I want more data. Come on, show me more." Bane's face flushed with rage. He upped the dosage of his enhanced venom. Enhanced venom. Maximum output. He pushed beyond his normal limits, letting the venom flood him to the brink of losing his sanity. His blows became a furious storm, the sort of power that could rip through tanks and planes if unleashed without restraint. He poured everything into the assault, trying to crush Fang once and for all. Fang stood like an unmovable mountain. Even when Bane's fists struck like cannonballs and his kicks like iron hammers, the golden-armored Fang remained steady. The street trembled with each impact. Buildings seemed to shiver. The Gotham officers watched, breathless and awed. The sight of Bane's ferocity only made Fang's immovability more terrifying. This was not merely human resilience. "Even from way over here, you can feel the air being pushed," one officer whispered. "Is he even human?" Fang, calm and unshaken, mocked Bane. "You really came to run wild in Gotham with just that?" That arrogance only fueled Bane's desperation. He drove the venom in harder, abandoning safety and sanity to overload himself. The attacks grew more frenzied, more violent. Vacuumed air and tremors followed his strikes. Yet every time he emptied himself, Fang's remark was the same. The strength had increased, but not enough to justify losing his mind and body. "You're resorting to insanity for so little," Fang said lightly, unmoved. "The cost is too high." Bane's roar turned animalistic. "Kill you! Kill you! Kill you!" Section 106 Bane had almost no intelligence left. Only one thought remained: keep hitting. His ferocity slammed against Fang's endurance, and the whole city shook under the impact. Even Batman watched with a rare, deep unease. Before Bane's enhancements, Bruce had admitted that if Bane took a full hit from him, it would be hard to gain the upper hand. After the enhancements, it was worse. But Fang now exceeded everything Bruce had imagined. He was absurdly difficult to harm. Bruce couldn't think of anything that might hurt him. Missiles? Nuclear warheads? What Bruce did not know was that a nuclear bomb literally could not injure Gao Li in his glitter form. The glitter memory wasn't confined to planetary-scale concepts. It had ascended beyond a Gaia memory into an Akashi memory. The idea of glitter operated on a universal level. Its power derived from temperature. Anything above absolute zero emits light. Some of it is in wavelengths humans can't see, but light is light. The glitter form turned that principle into defense. In practice, if an attack's effective temperature fell within the range of temperatures that actually exist in the universe, the glitter form would neutralize it. Based on human observations, the coldest place we know is near the Boomerang Nebula, around -272 degrees Celsius, and some of the hottest regions, near quasars around supermassive black holes, reach on the order of 10 trillion kelvins. The true extremes in the universe may be even more extreme, but as long as an incoming attack's temperature didn't drop below absolute zero or exceed the universe's highest existing temperature, the glitter form simply nullified it. That made it essentially invulnerable to physical attacks within that colossal range, and it even resisted knockback. Unlike some invincibility tricks where you're unharmed but still staggered, Fang wouldn't be pushed or rolled by those blows. So no matter how far Bane's power had been boosted, even if it were multiplied tenfold or 100-fold, he still couldn't harm Gao Li. Bane swung again, a strike to Gao Li's chest that should have leveled mountains. The force was deafening, yet the damage registered as zero. The impact slid off as if wiped clean. Instead, the venom coursing through Bane's veins left him sweating, gasping for breath. He had exhausted himself on a useless barrage. "Seems that's all you've got." "My taunt was wasted," Fang said, shaking his head as he casually waved his hand, as if brushing dust off a sleeve. He deflected Bane's next attack like it was nothing. Then Gao Li slapped once at the air like he was interrupting a fly. A blinding, golden glitter flared, and the light was so intense that people instinctively shielded their eyes. "Glitter, maximum drive," he called. Under that holy, glittering light, Gao Li leapt. Golden pteranodon wings unfurled behind him. With a single furious beat, his body accelerated into a streak of light and surged through Bane. A colossal explosion ripped upward. Fire stained half the sky over Gotham with a burning aurora. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing left of Bane. It's over. We made it. Long live Fang. For a few stunned seconds, the Gotham City police were silent. Then voices rose, cheers and shouts, raw relief and gratitude. They had seen the battle. They had been saved. Their faces shone with thankfulness. Bruce watched them and felt strangely adrift. Fang had killed Bane with no trial. That was plainly illegal, murder without due process, but no officer seemed to care. Under the circumstances, maybe this was what Gotham needed. The battle would be sung about simply because of how public and massive it had been. Under the eyes of the whole police force and countless witnesses, Fang had proven himself the true ruler of Gotham's underworld, the man who had been there first, the one who had built the city's shadow into his. Batman had his own honor and did much, but his no-kill policy could never deliver the same blunt, awe-striking shock. After today, even if the higher-ups at GCPD ordered Fang arrested, most of the officers would resist on principle or drag their feet. Many of those superiors had been rescued earlier that day. They understood, as Gordon did, why Fang existed. In Gotham's underground, the idea of opposing Fang had died. Criminals were in it for profit, and profit must be enjoyed with your life intact. To pick a fight you cannot possibly win is to invite death for no gain. Bruce had been busy in the aftermath, treating injuries, following up leads, and he watched these shifts in the city with a complicated mixture of feelings. It seemed Gotham would always be Fang's Gotham in spirit. But Bruce reminded himself of his original purpose. He had become Batman to fight crime, not to outcompete anyone. There was no need to wage a contest over supremacy. Meanwhile, Bruce's investigation into Bane's activities was far from finished. The case reached into the Wayne Group. Bruce discovered, more with horror than surprise, that a cabal had been trying to convert the Wayne Group's nuclear energy project into a bomb powerful enough to destroy Gotham. The thought made him shudder. It was only Fang's intervention that prevented catastrophe. Gao Li, however, had not been interested in Bruce's corporate intrigues. He had come that day simply to save Bruce. Gao Li returned to juggling multiple projects when one morning he received a call from the person he least wanted to hear from, John Constantine. "Hi, John," Constantine said as soon as the line connected. "Sorry it took me so long to thank you for saving Ziti that day." "John," Gao Li cut in, "I'll give you 10 seconds to explain why you're calling, or I hang up." "Oh, wait," Constantine sputtered. Right. I wanted to ask about that favor you said you'd owe me. Does it still count?" Gao Li raised an eyebrow. "Wasn't the Holy Son's advent resolved? Heaven didn't birth a Holy Son, did it?" "That's true, but that has nothing to do with your favor," Constantine said. "I never asked you to stop the Holy Son's advent. This is different." Gao Li hesitated. Constantine had a way of dragging everything into messes. Still, the caller had said this concerned all Earthlings. If it endangered Alfred or Bruce, Gao Li couldn't ignore it. "Fine, tell me." Constantine's voice dropped. "It starts with a girlfriend I met. Her name is Angela. Her sister supposedly killed herself. Angela is a natural psychic. She came to me to investigate. During that investigation, we found something disturbing." "What did you find?" "They were planning to use Angela and her sister's abilities to summon Mammon, the son of Satan, into the material world." Gao Li let himself picture the worst. "Mammon? That Mammon? If he shows up here, does Earth get annihilated?" "Who do you think Mammon is?" Constantine snapped. "He's Lucifer's son, pure demon, terrifyingly powerful. If Lucifer is the equivalent of the giant ferocious beast, Mammon would be at least a demon king supreme. He could wreck everything. And they already have Angela. She's been captured, and they've taken the Spear of Longinus. It's got the blood of Jesus on it. Between the psychic conduit and the relic, the conditions for summoning Mammon are met." Gao Li glanced at the sofa. Xiao Guang was sleeping there, oblivious, and found it hard to be terrified by a distant legend. Still, if Constantine said it was urgent, it would be urgent. "All right, I promised before. Send me the address and I'll see what I can do." When Gao Li, who sometimes went by John, arrived at the Victory Swallows, Constantine was already leaning on the curb, looking unusually sober. "You quit?" Gao Li asked when he saw Constantine without a cigarette. I quit, Constantine said, voice thin. A year ago, I was diagnosed with lung cancer. I thought I didn't care. Then I was badly hurt before the Holy Sun thing, fell from a moving train. The Eternal Punishment Legion healed me, and the Demon Lord's blood fixed the cancer, so I should take it easy. Gao Li scanned the street. Did you call the other magic folk? The other masters? Dr. Fate? Nabu wouldn't leave this to you alone, would he? Constantine shrugged. They're not exactly keen on me. My reputation isn't great among them. I did call, and grudgingly some said they'd help. Dr. Fate insists on monitoring threats from the Fate Tower. He'll come if things get critical. Nabu's Nabu. The Endless Lord, no one likes being around me. Gao Li frowned. You said this was about the safety of all Earthlings. That's something the Magic Masters would set aside their grievances for. They agreed to help, Constantine said wryly, but they all have their own duties. Besides, Mammon hasn't descended yet. I think, honestly, if the Lord of Magic moves early, the Magic Masters might not be necessary. Gao Li immediately raised a hand. Don't jinx it. With you saying that, a small scare could become a life-or-death catastrophe. Constantine winced. Right, I know. Look, I'll give you the details. Angela's being held in an old chapel outside the city. They've got the spear. I don't know who's running the cult, but they're organized. If we act, we need to move fast. Gao Li checked his phone as Constantine sent the coordinates. He felt the familiar, cold professionalism settle in. There was no time for second-guessing. If a demon like Mammon might be summoned, they'd better stop it before the first word of his name left the air. Section 107. Constantine stared, speechless. If I really had that kind of causality, I would have relied on curse magic or blessing magic as my main attack long ago. Don't worry, Gao Li said. The Fate Tower will detect Mammon the moment he tries to come into the material world. Nabu and the Magic Masters will rush to support us. Gao Li produced the infinite magic ring. Then let's move. Do you know where your girlfriend was taken? Constantine handed him a marked map. To a remote, ruined psychiatric hospital. Angela was once confined there. Gao Li frowned. What about the patients and staff inside? They've been turned into living dead, controlled by demons to guard Mammon's rebirth ritual, along with half-blood demons. How do you know all that? Gao Li asked. Not just the location, but the situation inside as well. Constantine tapped his temple. Because I saw it. Do you know Midnight Bar and Midnight Daddy? Gao Li shook his head. Midnight Bar is a hangout for the magic world's small fries. Midnight Daddy is a voodoo practitioner, the Voodoo King, whose spells are brutal and unorthodox. Constantine clenched his jaw as if remembering something foul. I don't care to recall much of Midnight Bar. Suffice it to say, I found the Spear of Longinus's location and the situation around it through a very painful voodoo spell. According to Constantine, the Spear of Longinus was required for Mammon's rebirth ritual. If Angela was to be used in that ritual, she and the spear would be in the same place, which, now, was that hospital. Constantine added bitterly, I never thought the holy spear stained with the Son of God's blood would be needed to summon the son of Satan. Strange world. Gao Li sighed, though mythically it made sense. Satan corresponded to God, a son of Satan to a son of God. He didn't know who would correspond to Xiaoguang, but there was no time for metaphysics. He pivoted and transformed on the spot. Infinite, please, Gao Li intoned. Gold, wood, water, fire, earth, all-encompassing Yinglong. The incantation finished, and beside Constantine, a man became a crystalline, diamond-bright Kamen Rider. Constantine blinked. I keep feeling like you've grown stronger. Gao Li chuckled. As expected of a magic master who specializes in hustling, your perception is sharp, John. I've been lending out a lot of night magic lately. I get feedback. Constantine understood and nodded. I was going to use some holy water tricks to attack the hospital quietly, but I guess that's redundant. Clark's night magic promotion had been effective. Hesitant masters had started using night magic en masse. By now, over 90% of the magic world possessed it. The daily feedback to Gao Li had accumulated into significant growth. Compared to the Lord of Magic's total power, it was a drop in the ocean. But with so many people contributing every day, he had been getting steadily stronger. Their sweep through the hospital was supposed to be a crushing victory, and now Gao Li was stronger than before. They stepped inside. The outer barrier meant nothing to them. Ugh. Even knowing what he'd find, Constantine couldn't help a soft retch. Blood splattered the walls, chunks of flesh hanging in places, the air thick with a metallic stench. Demons do this for intimidation, Constantine said coldly, so I have no scruples about deceiving them. Gowli looked at him. You don't seem to have scruples about deceiving people either. Slander, absolutely slander, Constantine protested, half joking. Gowli ignored him, unease tightening his features. The demons had ravaged all life and converted people into living dead. Even half-blood demons showed ferocity and cruelty beyond measure. Midnight Daddy's voodoo only pinpointed this location, not the spear itself. We'll search floor by floor. The magic master's ring on Gowli's hand glowed in the dark as Constantine led them down a corridor. It didn't take long for a half-blood demon to notice their trail, though stealth wasn't really the point. With Gowli's speed, sweeping through would be fast regardless. The demon charged, roaring. Die, it screamed. Gowli narrowed his eyes and poured night magic into his form. At his current level, he no longer needed textbook incantations. The magic sprang forth almost instinctively. Boom. Power exploded from him. His magic attacks were unavoidable and unstoppable for the living dead and half-blood demons. Each strike carried destructive force enough to fell them in an instant. In thick smoke and flashing light, bodies were torn apart and scattered. When the smoke cleared, the hall was a mess, but no threats remained. It's nice to have you lead the way. I just stand back and watch the show, Constantine whistled. Gowli's onslaught left no room for him to do anything. More often than not, as soon as Constantine thought of intervening, the enemy was already finished by Gowli's strike. It recalled Gowli's old description. Restraint is paramount. Specialized attacks are godlike. Here, magic-type enemies were utterly powerless against the Lord of Magic. Stop joking and find her, Gowli said, scanning the wreckage. Bodies and body parts were everywhere. No intact humans remained. He swept each floor in turn, the attacks coming so fast, many enemies didn't even realize they'd been invaded until they were dying. As the survivors rallied and surged, snarling and baring claws, Gowli simply unleashed more. Fireballs that incinerated groups, lightning that shredded others. Screams filled the halls as living dead and demons fell one after another. Even pure-blood demons from hell were reduced to pale howls under his power. The cleanup was quick and merciless. There was no suspense. At the top floor, Constantine pushed open a heavy door. Inside, a huge pool filled the room. A tall figure held Angela under the water. Gowli raised a hand. The man dissolved into a scattering of ash. At a glance, Gowli could tell he wasn't human. What human could be riddled with bullets and still move freely? Angela! Constantine dove in and dragged her from the pool, then cursed and staggered back. Shit! What's wrong? Gowli asked. Too late. Mammon's already possessing her. All that's left is the Spear of Longinus for him to descend into the material world. They didn't stand idle. As they retreated, both chanted spells. Angela stumbled from the pool with an ashen face, and Constantine could feel a thing moving violently inside her, something hellish trying to burst out of her gut. Gowli struck decisively. No matter if you're the son of Satan or anything else, you can't break out with magic while I'm here. He flashed forward, pinned Angela to the floor with his palm, and the infinite magic flared. Mammon's struggle within her weakened. Angela's eyes cleared gradually as she wrested back control. Good. Constantine ran up, relief breaking his features. I'll try to force him back to hell with a binding spell. Open a path for me. Before Constantine could finish moving, an invisible force seized him. Its power smashed through protections Constantine had prepared in moments, strong enough to nearly snap him like a twig. What? Constantine shouted. Who is it? Gowli demanded. Both were stunned. This attack was far beyond ordinary. Could someone else be behind it besides Mammon? Because the unseen assailant was so powerful, Constantine was in immediate peril of being overwhelmed. Gowli had to split some of his power to pull him free, just enough to distract him. Mammon, however, seized the opening. Angela began to expel a black, choking gas. Although this was still inside the hospital, a massive hellish presence was finding an opening into the material world. The Fate Tower reacted instantly. Dr. Kent's face changed, his helmet glowing golden as he switched to Nabu. Not good. A supreme being is trying to invade the material world. Location. He locked his gaze across space and time. The magic masters, already on alert, began teleporting under Gaewani's reverse magic. As they prepared another teleportation spell to move en masse to the hospital, Gaewani suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. "Gaewani, what's wrong?" someone shouted. He knelt, horrified. "There's a barrier, so strong. The backlash from space magic almost killed me." The magic masters were stunned. Gaewani was a top-tier mage. If the barrier's mere backlash almost felled him, none of them would fare much better. What level of expert could set such a barrier? Nabu reacted with cold clarity. "Break it for me." Golden, massive chains, Nabu's summoning, fell from the sky to strike the barrier from a distance. The barrier did not budge. Even Nabu's chains had no effect. The magic master's pupils dilated in disbelief. "It's confirmed," Nabu said grimly. "This must be a barrier set by a supreme being. Nothing less could stop me." "Another supreme being hidden behind this?" Master Achi whispered, sweating. Counting Mammon, that made 2 supreme beings involved. And the unspoken implication stung even more. Nabu had attacked head-on while the opponent only put up a barrier, and Nabu couldn't shake it. The enemy's power was far beyond his. Section 108. Even among the Supremes, there are strengths and weaknesses, common knowledge in the magic world. Nabu God King ranked near the bottom of that tier. Virtually every other Supreme could outmatch him. Trying to save face, Nabu hurriedly said, "Don't panic. The barrier isn't indestructible. Give me time and I'll break it." Everyone forced a bitter smile. Mammon was nearly unleashed from hell. If they granted him more time now, everything could be lost. But having gone this far, they had no choice but to hope Nabu would do the job. The only practical option was to keep watching the hospital under the barrier. At the hospital's top floor, Gao Li was multitasking. With one hand, he maintained the binding magic woven from infinite power to keep Angela suppressed. With the other, he enlarged his palm and snatched Constantine. With a single sweep, his greatly expanded hand closed on a figure, and he managed to pull Constantine back. That was close. Thanks. Constantine, drenched in sweat, collapsed to the floor, feeling as if he had walked the edge of death. Gao Li ignored him and focused on the figure whose invisibility had begun to fail the instant Gao Li touched him with endless style. The concealment dissolved, revealing the opponent's true form. "As expected of the Endless Lord, your reputation is well deserved, but you've ruined my plans." An arrogant, angry voice answered. The one who appeared was an angel with white wings on his back. "You," Gao Li and Constantine's pupils sharpened in unison. "The Ancient One? Gabriel?" they both cried. For a moment, the angel himself looked taken aback. He and Constantine both asked Gao Li, "Who is the Ancient One?" Gao Li laughed and deflected it. "Oh, nothing. The Ancient One's an old acquaintance. You remind me of her so much I could punch you." The angel before them was almost certainly Gabriel, not the impostor Uriel, the Flame of God, but Gabriel, one of heaven's archangels. He was a true supreme, the human angel king of the heavens. No wonder Constantine recognized him. The revelation shocked everyone in the Fate Tower. How is this possible?" murmurs rippled. "Is heaven involved? Has heaven been provoked by the advent of the Holy Sun? What do we do?" None of them had expected Gabriel to be the other mastermind. Even Nabu hadn't guessed it. He had assumed a demon king from hell was cooperating with Mammon. The reality was worse. Gabriel's renown among Supremes surpassed any demon king's. Inside the hospital, Gabriel's simple words landed like thunder. Constantine felt the air squeeze from his lungs. The sarcastic response he'd been about to make died in his throat. Gao Li turned slightly, putting himself between Gabriel and Constantine, narrowing his eyes. "So the Spear of Longinus is in your hands? Are you planning to destroy the world?" If it had been a mortal speaking, Gabriel would have ignored him, but this came from another Supreme. Though Gabriel's tone toward Constantine was contemptuous, he did not disregard the Lord of Magic. "I do not intend to destroy God's Eden," Gabriel replied. "My purpose is to enlighten humanity." Constantine, finally able to speak because Gao Li was screening Gabriel's presence, snapped. "By handing the world over to Satan's son to enlighten it?" Gabriel's face darkened, but he addressed Gao Li directly, voice slow. "Humans have been given God's chance for atonement. Murderers, rapists, abusers, if they repent, the Lord embraces them. No other creature in the universe receives such preferential treatment. It is unfair. If God's compassion for humanity is so great, then humanity must be worthy of it. His expression twisted as he rose into the air. I have observed humanity for a long time. Only under fear do they find their nobility. I will bring pain and fear upon the material world so they might rise above it. After the baptism of hell, if humanity can endure and survive, then they are worthy of the Lord's favor. Only those who survive the apocalypse shall receive salvation. Gabriel, you're insane, Gao said coldly. Gabriel laughed, arms spread. The path to salvation begins tonight. He was the first to strike. A sword of holy light appeared in his hand, unassuming in shape, but both Constantine and Gao reacted. Constantine sensed a profound terror, while Gao, through his Lord of Magic perception, discerned the truth. Gabriel had compressed tremendous power into that blade while restraining its outward flow, a terrifying force packed into an exquisitely contained point. Its destructive power, if unleashed, would surpass anything on Earth. Gabriel then charged, his blade whistling as it slashed. Unlimitedness, please. Gao instantaneously accelerated his personal time flow, sliding aside with grace. He wasn't merely evading. As Lord of Magic, he performed subtle manipulations. As he moved, he scattered magic nodes along his path. Endless styles nullifying properties began to infiltrate Gabriel's sword, making the holy blade flicker as if it might die out. Good move, Gabriel snarled. You almost succeeded, but it takes time to erase and disintegrate my spell. I only need to be faster than you. He felt his power falter and flapped his wings, descending like lightning. Gao struck back without hesitation. A dark light erupted from his palm, a blend of night magic and mana-devouring effects tied to endless style. The dark energy seemed to pull at Gabriel's divine power, rapidly devouring it. What? Gabriel staggered, feeling his strength ebb. He struggled to stabilize, then retreated, cursing. Gao allowed himself a breath. For a moment he thought, good, he's not as strong as I feared, though still formidable. But Gabriel quickly recovered and surged again, the holy light sword swinging with renewed fury. Gao kept accelerating his time flow, dodging through the narrow corridor while simultaneously eroding Gabriel's divine shields with nullifying magic. Gabriel, anticipating such a tactic, had stacked many divine defenses to buy reaction time if one layer broke. The corridor became a battlefield. Each clash sent out roaring impacts. Bricks crumbled and dust choked the air. Yinglong, come out, Gao shouted, not merely to parry but to strike. He summoned the Huihuang sword axe and swung it like a storm, each blow amplified by layered magical enhancements. Gabriel dodged with agility, countering with slices of holy light. Though Gabriel's strikes carried greater raw force, Gao's endless style attacked the magic component of Gabriel's power, chipping away at it with aggravating effect. Gabriel roared, a sound that was as much heavenly music as fury, and the hospital windows shattered in a spray of glass. He then unleashed a concentrated beam of light from his sword aimed straight at Gao. Gao leaped aside, but the beam still clipped one arm. He staggered back 10 meters, clutching the wound, heart racing. That still hurts, he thought. Even after disintegrating part of the attack, the residual power nearly pierced the endless armor. He used his free hand to weave infinite magic and quickly repair his endless robe, restoring resilience. Gabriel tilted his head, assessing him with cold curiosity. The Endless Lord is troublesome, but perhaps not as invincible as the outside world said. Gao steadied himself and smiled thinly. Offense is the best defense. To avoid being hit, I'll take the initiative. Gao finalized his plan and surged at Gabriel in a blaze of magic. Their axes and swords clashed, a harsh metallic ring filling the hospital room. The fight intensified, their powers colliding so tightly that Constantine, crouched beside Angela, trembled. Both combatants held their strength in check. Even the smallest ripple of stray power could have obliterated him. Boom. Gabriel's wings unfurled like golden blades, and a massive wave of energy slammed toward Gao. Gao responded instantly, throwing up a palm to form a barrier of infinite magic that swallowed the blast. Gabriel's eyes flashed with anger as he lunged with blinding speed, swinging a massive golden longsword. Gao's nullifying magic met every blow, but Gabriel's attacks were relentless, forcing him to fall back step by step. Gao, however, refused to be outmatched. He concentrated, probing for openings, countering whenever he could, while using his infinite magic to blunt Gabriel's assaults. For a time, they were locked in a stalemate, divine power against nullifying sorcery, shattering tiles and wrecking beds and equipment until the hospital room was a ruin. The clash reached a white-hot peak, explosions of light and heat painting the air. High touch! Shining strike! The massive Huihuang sword axe plunged into Gabriel's chest with a dull thud. He was sent flying through the wall and out of the hospital. The magic masters outside the barrier stared in surprise, and even Nabu, the god king who oversaw the Order Pantheon, showed a flicker of disbelief. Inside Fate Tower, the barrier had kept the details unclear, but now it seemed evident. Gabriel, the legendary Angel King, was on the defensive. Whispers ran through the watchers. Had the Endless Lord really seized the upper hand against an established Supreme? Don't be hasty, someone warned. Gabriel, floating calmly in the air, wore that aloof mask again. Heh, I see now. I understand your power completely. From here on out, you have no chance. Gabriel's voice tightened with excitement. Your annoying talent simply nullifies magic, causing anything bound with magic to disintegrate. During the fight, you broke down the energies inside me and prevented me from using my full strength. He flexed a hand, and a huge golden orb of light peeled away from his body and hovered midair. Everyone stared. Gabriel had thrown out a large portion of his divine power. Gao Li's heart sank. Gabriel had noticed exactly what Gao Li had been doing. In raw speed and strength, Gabriel still had the edge over the Endless Lord. Relying solely on his physical body without the corrupting divine energies might make Gabriel even more formidable. Then let's see how this plays out. Gabriel sneered and lunged again. The power he'd expelled hadn't vanished. He could draw it back if necessary. It was a calculated gamble. Boom. This time, Gao Li was the one slammed down, from the top floor all the way into the underground room. Coughing in the dust and smoke, he muttered, "You bastard found the trick. Luckily, I have a counter." He raised his hand and traced a linking magic circle. Gabriel's spatial seal couldn't stop the Endless Lord's magic. From the circle came a dragon's roar, and a pteranodon memory flew out, bearing the lost driver. Gabriel's expression darkened. He rushed down to intercept. Even stripped of much of his divine power, he still had a body like a god, but he lacked ranged powers like heat vision and depended on close combat. His terrifying speed sliced the air into a hurricane. Gao Li slapped the shining memory into the lost driver. Transform! Glitter! Blinding gold tore through the smoke, and at the same moment, Gabriel closed in and threw a brutal punch. Bang! For a heartbeat, Gabriel's pupils constricted. A golden knight in a cape materialized and effortlessly caught the blow. Of course it's possible, Gao Li said with a small smile. Now then, face judgment, Gabriel. My heart is pure. I have no sin, Gabriel roared and renewed his assault, fists striking like thunder. He hammered Gao Li with a dozen punishing blows and swept with his feet, but Gao Li stood like a mountain, immovable. The strikes thudded uselessly against him. Gao Li didn't merely withstand the onslaught, he mocked it. He let punches and kicks land on him, blocking only the fiercest attacks with casual gestures. Gabriel's rage built. He accelerated, pivoted, struck from all angles, but Gao Li parried or ignored them with the ease of someone who'd seen it all. It's time you face reality, Gabriel, Gao Li said lightly. Don't get cocky, Endless Lord. Gabriel's eyes were bloodshot. He unleashed a barrage so fast it blurred into afterimages, each punch compressing the air into a sharp whistle. Gao Li stood calm under the storm, accepting the blows and replying with precise counters. At last, Gao Li found an opening and landed a heavy punch to Gabriel's abdomen. The Angel King slammed into a concrete pillar, cracking it deep. This isn't right. Why am I at a disadvantage? Gabriel gritted his teeth, furious. He kept pressing, a berserker of divine might, fists and feet raining down with savage speed and concussive force. But no matter how hard he struck, Gao Li remained planted, responding when he chose and wearing the rest with haughty composure. From the rooftop, Constantine peered through the hole into the underground room, trembling. He watched Gao Li seize a moment to push back, watching with the rest as the two figures blurred and struck again and again. Each impact echoed bang, thud, crash, an unending drum of violence. Gabriel's roar filled the chamber as he redoubled his efforts, desperate and enraged. His attacks came faster and harder, but the deeper his fury, the more he seemed to feed Gao Li's composure. The battle rolled on, a storm of golden light, with neither willing to yield. His fists smashed toward Gao Li, shredding the air as it passed, and yet it came back as if it had hit nothing at all. Gabriel's anger flared. He tensed, shifting tactics constantly, unleashing ever more brutal combinations, but Gao Li stood like an unbreakable wall. Why? Why won't it work? What kind of power is this? Confusion and frustration crept into Gabriel's mind. The man across from him far exceeded anything Gabriel had imagined. No matter how hard he struck, his overwhelming divine might felt trivial against Gao Li. Could this be the method of a lord of magic? Constantine watched from the shadows and couldn't hide his astonishment. Facing Gabriel like this, Gao Li was somehow gaining the upper hand. Each collision of fists and feet shook the underground garage. Iron pillars groaned, cars buckled, and the walls of the parking level bore witness to the clash of supremes, ringing with metallic screams each time they struck. Gabriel's confidence faltered. His power was terrifying, but it could not breach Gao Li's defense. Gao Li was an impenetrable barrier. A cold dread crept over Gabriel. Am I going to lose? Am I no match for the Endless Lord? The thought seized him like a hand tightening around his heart. No, it's not over. I still have other methods. He lunged for the divine power he'd expelled to the outside. If he reabsorbed that power, he might still have a chance, as long as he could reach it. But Gao Li's expression behind his mask hardened. He launched himself to intercept. If Gabriel regained his divine might, what kind of supreme could he become? Able to summon temperatures approaching absolute zero or soaring beyond quasar heat. Among god kings who are also supremes, many possess creative authority. Some could reproduce or even surpass cosmic phenomena. If Gabriel were unleashed, the shining memory could break. Gao Li's glitter form boasted maximal defense, but its offensive power and mobility lagged, especially compared to Gabriel. Stopping Gabriel would be difficult. Constantine's mind raced as he took it in. Gabriel is aiming to retrieve his divine power, and Gao Li is blocking him, he muttered. If Gabriel regained it, he wouldn't need to defeat Gao Li. He only needed an opening to use the Spear of Longinus on Angela and release Mammon into the human world. Then Gao Li, already struggling against one supreme, would be faced with two. If the fight dragged on, one mistake would be enough. Pale dread climbed his spine. He had to think of something. Gao Li's intent was obvious in the heat of battle. There was no time for subterfuge. Gabriel noticed immediately. A wild, triumphant laugh burst from him. So that's it. Once I reclaim my divine power, I can use more methods. Why waste time with you? Endless Lord, watch me unleash Mammon into the human world. You wish, Gao Li growled and kept fighting. The two of them tumbled from the garage up through the hospital, smashing through floors and corridors as their war climbed toward the night sky. Gabriel seized his chance. With a blur of motion, he reached the place where his divine power hovered and drew it back into himself. Gao Li had resisted the urge to use a minor control skill, powerful but only usable once a day. He held that card in reserve. Even if Gabriel regained his power, Gao Li reasoned, without understanding the precise conditions of the glitter form's defenses, Gabriel couldn't deliberately unleash the extreme temperature attacks needed to break through. As expected, when Gabriel reabsorbed the divine light, he felt invigorated. His body radiated a sacred, majestic glow. He looked every inch a god. He raised his hands and poured that power out like thunder. Die! Brilliant beams of holy light lanced through the corridor, dazzling and destructive. The hospital shook as glowing bombs detonated, painting the air with blinding radiance. But beneath the bombardment, Gao Li's voice came, calm and unimpressed. Gabriel, when did you think you could win merely by regaining your divine power? Gabriel's confident grin froze. Why was Gao Li unharmed? The Endless Lord's body was like carved stone. His glitter form repelled the divine onslaught entirely. Gabriel hurled more power, flames, lightning, a storm tearing through the hospital. Ceilings caved in, walls were shredded, glass rained down, debris swept toward Gao Li in a whirlwind and dissolved on contact, reduced to dust. Gabriel stopped to breathe, chest heaving. He had exhausted his options. Without understanding how the glitter form worked defensively, he couldn't mount a targeted assault. Frustration and impotence roared up inside him. Endless Lord, is he truly unbeatable? He pushed the thought away. No, Not yet. Gabriel steadied himself and redoubled his efforts, trying new patterns of attack. Still, Gowli stood firm, his masked eyes betraying neither fear nor strain, only a faint, almost amused disdain. "Fall!" Gabriel bellowed. Light and energy braided into nightmarish shapes, his presence flickering through the light with every move dripping destruction. Nothing harmed Gao Li. The Endless Lord advanced through the storm as if walking through rain. Sparks danced on his armor and then died out. "How many times must I tell you? You cannot hurt me, Gabriel." Gao Li spoke slowly, then walked toward him. The tempest around them dimmed. Gabriel's face went ashen. He could not deny the truth. And then clarity broke through his panic. He had been fighting the wrong fight. His true goal had never been to defeat the Endless Lord. His goal was simple: release Mammon into the human world and put humanity on trial. If he abandoned this head-on duel and used his speed and strength to reach Angela, Gao Li, strong in defense but slower and less powerful in mobility, would have a hard time stopping him. A cruel smile cut Gabriel's features. He had been distracted by the hope of victory. Now he saw the point of it all. Gao Li's heart sank when he realized what Gabriel intended. Sure enough, Gabriel moved with lethal purpose toward Angela. The spear of Longinus appeared in his hand as if by thought. Gao Li could not match Gabriel's raw speed and strength head-to-head. He had to change tactics. He dropped the futile wrestling for advantage and reached instead for the one control skill he had been saving. He began to chant in an exact cadence, not for meaning, but to meet the skill's activation conditions. "Gabriel," his voice intoned, each syllable measured. "Why is it that even the most sinful can receive God's mercy with a single repentance? Why do your methods fail to pierce my defenses, no matter how divine they seem? How can the Lord of Magic's new power be suffused with such a sacred aura?" The words weren't important in themselves, the rhythm was. When his chanting finished, the skill triggered. Gabriel felt it like a hand closing around his motion. His speed collapsed. No matter how hard he strained, no matter how much force he summoned, Gabriel could barely move, at most 10 centimeters per second. "What kind of demonic power is this?" Gabriel said, stunned. "It actually has such coercive force." He couldn't sense the slightest change in power. Gao Li, chanting desperately, broke out in a cold sweat as he thought of countermeasures. The 10-meter dash had only been a temporary delaying tactic. It could not hold Gabriel forever. When the skill ended, Gabriel would be free, and then nothing could stop him from piercing Angela with the spear of Longinus. Fortunately, they were not alone. Constantine was there too. He was the sort of man who usually betrayed allies, selfish and unreliable, but in crucial moments he always found perverse, decisive solutions. When he realized he couldn't save Richie, he had suppressed his grief and cut power without hesitation. Now Constantine had prepared a second plan. Drip, drip, drip. Blood fell from Constantine's wrist, where he'd sliced himself with the shattered glass Gao Li and Gabriel had made. The short clash and the 10-meter dash had drained Constantine. He was dying. He was committing suicide, but not out of despair. He was doing it for a purpose. Constantine had tricked so many demons before, even humiliating Satan Lucifer, that he believed Lucifer would come personally to claim his soul. He was counting on it. Time seemed to stop. In Constantine's blurring vision, a pair of bare feet appeared, stained with dirty black mud. The newcomer wore a white suit, Satan Lucifer himself. Bare feet carried meaning in this world. Jesus was often shown barefoot in myth. Lucifer walked barefoot, and Gabriel was usually shoeless too. For divine figures, bareness could symbolize purity. Lucifer's feet bore the world's grime. The newcomer's presence froze everything, not merely an illusion, but the world itself halted. "Hello, John," Lucifer said, unhurried. Constantine croaked. "Why are you so slow?" "Don't worry, we have infinite time." Lucifer strolled forward, and the halted world remained utterly still behind him. "I told you," Constantine murmured, "your soul will be taken by you personally." "I'm going to have a cigarette. You don't mind?" Constantine asked weakly. "Go ahead. We have all the time in the world," Lucifer said, smiling. Constantine tried to produce a cigarette and lighter, but his fingers would not obey. Cutting tendons had left them useless. Lucifer snapped his fingers, and a small ball of flame lit the cigarette for him. He seemed in a good mood. "I'm very good to you, aren't I?" Lucifer chuckled. There's a very large amusement park waiting for you in hell. Come along." "You really are generous," Constantine said with a bitter smile. "An amusement park of the 18 forms of torture, I suppose?" Lucifer wagged a finger. "No, your guess is too small." Constantine took a drag and steered the conversation. "I heard you have a family now. How is that?" "Busy, busy, busy," Lucifer said. "I could use a vacation, but I'm pleased. 2 new family members recently appeared. It's heartening." Constantine's eyes narrowed. Who were the new family members? He didn't have time to dwell. "I hear one of them is nearby right now," he said. "Boys will be boys," Lucifer replied, smiling. He nudged Constantine with his foot, who flinched back. Constantine, who tended to be attracted to both genders, only managed, "Your child is cooperating with Gabriel." Lucifer's expression tightened. "Gabriel? That's tasteless." "They also have the Spear of Longinus," Constantine added. "Enough to pull your child down to the material world, yes?" Lucifer's thoughts flickered, and scenes from the battle filled his mind, as if he were everywhere at once. "So that's it, a rebellious child." Lucifer turned toward Gabriel. The angel had been immobilized by the 10-meter dash. He hung there, fixed like an insect in amber. Gaoli, not in his endless style, but in glitter form, was frozen too. Glitter had incredible defense, but it did not grant the magic immunity of the endless style, and it couldn't resist Lucifer's time stop. "Humph, Mammon, ambitious enough to collude with heaven," Lucifer said. Time snapped back on. Gabriel's pupils constricted. "Lucifer!" Lucifer flicked a finger. Gabriel spat blood and flew backward, feathers scattered from torn wings. "This world will be mine sooner or later, Gabriel. You understand ambition better than any of us." Lucifer beckoned. Angela's body flew through the air into his hand, her neck in what looked like a grip, but in the shards of broken glass that reflected the scene, it was clear Lucifer held Mammon's neck, not Angela's. Mammon writhed but could not budge. "Time to go home, son," Lucifer murmured. Then he squeezed. Mammon screamed, turned to ash, and was forced back to hell. Angela's body, lifeless, was tossed aside like refuse. You. Gabriel's lips trembled. Lucifer's single gesture had shattered his plan. 2 supreme beings were powerless before Lucifer. It made sense. If God ruled as the supreme apex of the universe, Lucifer was the counterpart, supreme among supremely powerful beings. His power was something other god kings would fear to confront. Gabriel, however, could not be still. Though his body shook, he clenched his fist, glitter flaring around him. "In the name of God's power, I will crush you." He struck, but Lucifer didn't bother blocking. Gabriel's punch halted midair, unable to move forward. "Too weak," Lucifer said, licking his lips, amused. "It seems even you didn't realize someone has stopped backing you." Lucifer tapped Gabriel lightly. A tsunami of force struck the archangel. Gabriel's face registered horror. "Father, how could—" Before he finished, the wings on Gabriel's back ignited and disintegrated into ash. Lucifer was right. Gabriel's actions had violated God's will. Top heavenly beings drew on God's power according to God's intent. The more Gabriel acted against that intent, the more God reduced the power granted to him. In short, this Gabriel had been deprived of most of God's power and had been fighting on his own strength, a fact Gaoli had sensed earlier. Gabriel had not been the full supreme being Gaoli had assumed. Like the Spectre and other high-ranking beings, Gabriel had always been arrogant and slow to sense changes in his own divine allotment. Only now did he realize how weakened he was and why he had been so impotent before Lucifer. As Gabriel fell, the barrier he had erected around the hospital shattered. Everyone at the Fate Tower felt a surge of hope. They could finally teleport in. "Let's go in and support them," Master Ochi said seriously. "If Mammon truly invades the material world, it'll be terrible." Sargon frowned. "Is that necessary? Gabriel's barrier being broken suggests the Endless Lord has the upper hand. Maybe Gabriel's already handled it. Who do you think Gabriel is? If he were that easy to defeat, his name wouldn't shake the universe," Nabu God King said disdainfully. Even magic masters had limited perspective. Nabu knew how powerful Gabriel was when fully empowered. They began to prepare spatial movement, but Nabu suddenly froze and shouted, "Stop! Don't move!" "What's wrong?" the magic masters asked, alarmed. Nabu's helmet trembled with unease. This aura, impossible. Why is Lucifer in the material world?" The Fate Tower systems had detected nothing beforehand. Neither the Order Divine system's monitoring nor the tower's protections could sense or stop Lucifer. No system could. At the mention of Lucifer, everyone broke into a cold sweat. Lucifer! Satan's here! Back on the battlefield, Gowli stared at Lucifer as if at a lethal opponent. He had learned who the white-suited man was from Gabriel and had seen the terrifying display of power. Facing Gowli's tension, Lucifer smiled faintly. Relax, Lucifer said, addressing Gowli in a calm voice. Child's father. Gowli blinked. Who was he calling Child's father? Constantine, weak from blood loss, lifted his head in shocked surprise too. Gowli didn't know Lucifer well. Why the intimate term? The remark hung in the air, shocking everyone present. You can't just say things like that, Gowli stammered. What do you mean, father of the child? I have nothing to do with you. Lucifer laughed outright. I knew you'd react like that. It's delicious, but is it really completely unrelated? Light, how is that child Xiao Guang doing now? Isn't Xiao Guang your son? If so, you're naturally the father of the child. Constantine listened, completely bewildered. Who was Xiao Guang? Had Gowli secretly married and had a child without anyone knowing? It hadn't even been a year. Gowli frowned. Xiao Guang is my son, yes, but that isn't the point. The phrase father of the child is... Lucifer cut him off. Xiao Guang is not only your son, he is also my son, so it's only natural I would call you father of the child. What are you talking about? Gowli's brows drew together. Xiao Guang came from the giant ferocious beast's essence. If anyone is his parent, it's that beast. Isn't that exactly the point? Lucifer said, cool as ever. The giant ferocious beast is both me and not me, both related to me and not related to me. The words sounded like a riddle, but Gowli got the gist. There was some convoluted link between the beast and Lucifer. The implications landed like a punch. If a child born of the giant ferocious beast's essence was also his son, then he was, by right, the son of hell. And yet he had been presented as the Holy Son. The Holy Son should have been heaven's heir. Instead, heaven's ideal and hell's child had converged in one being. It was the greatest mockery of heaven, a blasphemy against God. Lucifer's rapturous grin made perfect sense. Constantine's shock came from a different angle. The conversation revealed the Holy Son's advent had gone catastrophically wrong. The second-generation Holy Son hadn't been born in the green of all things as intended, but had been born somehow through Gowli. No wonder Lucifer was ecstatic. He'd once rebelled because he had been forced to kneel before the Holy Son. Now that Holy Son had in some sense become Lucifer's child. What could be more satisfying? Ah, so the two extra family members you mentioned are Gowli and that Holy Son, Light, Constantine muttered to himself. When you asked which of your children I meant, you were asking about Mammon or Light. Gowli was still reeling. Inexplicably, he had formed a deep bond with the Devil King of Hell, and worse, had become an instrument in Lucifer's grand blasphemy. He felt his temples throb. Lucifer, on the other hand, was in high spirits. Humming, the devil strolled over to the fallen Gabriel and picked up the spear of Longinus, turning it over in his hand. I haven't given my son a newborn gift yet, Lucifer said, indulging in a demonic chuckle. How about this? The spear of destiny, stained with his brother's blood. Now that's rich with irony. He toyed with the spear, then glancing at Gowli's lost driver and shining memory, rubbed the weapon deliberately. But if I gave it straight to that silly boy now, it wouldn't do him much good beyond being a stick to carry. You can use it for the time being. Lucifer tossed the modified spear of Longinus to Gowli. He caught it without thinking. Up close, Gowli froze. Lucifer had transformed the spear with an unmistakable technological imprint. It looked like something out of Kamen Rider W. The blade had a slot for a memory, and the whole design mirrored a driver weapon. At once, knowledge flooded Gowli's mind. How Gaia memories and the lost driver worked, how metal memories functioned. It was as if the spear itself contained the system's operating principles. The memory of the giant ferocious beast's power flared in his head. That creature had instantly understood and assimilated night magic after even a single attack. Now, contact with the spear imparted that same instant comprehension. The spear was a sacred object, reworked by Lucifer to be perfectly compatible with the shining memory, a divine concept in its own right. It could accept the shining memory's insertion and perform a maximum drive. Up until now, the shining memory had been almost purely defensive, a near impenetrable shield unless an attack approached absolute zero or astronomical temperatures. With the spear, Gao Li suddenly had near invincible offensive power as well. Any enemy whose defenses weren't colder than minus 273 degrees Celsius or hotter than 1 billion degrees would find their defenses bypassed as if they didn't exist. Gao Li didn't need to fight to realize how absurdly powerful that made him. Against Gabriel again, wielding this spear, victory would be effortless. Lucifer circled him, pleased. You like my gift. Good. Next comes your reward. You've done me a great favor, father of the child. How could I not repay you? Gao Li's skin prickled as Lucifer's arm drifted possessively onto his shoulder. Panic rose. He hurriedly forced a laugh. Cough. Mr. Lucifer, the spear is enough. If that's all, please. No, no, Lucifer said, shaking his head. After such blasphemy against heaven, there must be a reward. This is a feat no hell demon has even dreamed of achieving. Gao Li wanted to protest. He hadn't intended any of this, but Lucifer's grin widened. I've thought of something fitting, and it lets me insult that old bastard god again. Delightful. Lucifer's eyes fell on Gabriel. Gao Li glanced at the fallen angel and understood even less. Lucifer pointed, and Gabriel, who had been unconscious until now, howled in agony. My essence. No. Lucifer, you can't. Be quiet, Gabriel. I never want to see you again. With a single brutal motion, Lucifer clenched his fist. Gabriel's body detonated, where the archangel had been hung a solid, shimmering orb of light. This was not the diffuse divine energy Gabriel had spilled before. It was compact, concentrated, like the distilled core of his authority, his godhead. Lucifer held the orb up to Gao Li. Do you know what this is, father of the child? Call it Gabriel's godhead, the condensed form of his authority. He savored the moment. Gabriel defied God's precepts and let God's power wane, and that made it trivially easy for me to tear this away from him. In the end, it's Gabriel's own fault. Still, he's a supreme being. I'll give this godhead to you. Gao Li felt tempted. Power like that was intoxicating. But he imagined the consequences of taking on heaven's authority and flinched. He started to refuse. I didn't ask your opinion, Lucifer replied with a domineering smile. Before Gao Li could move, time seemed to thicken. The condensed authority poured into Gao Li, into Yinglong, the entity within him. Yinglong screamed, bathed in blinding golden light as power erupted through it. The creature's body evolved, turning radiant and gilded. The endless style had been boosted yet again. Even the endless magician's ring, now rightfully renamed the endless golden Yinglong, changed. Until now, Gao Li had held a lofty title without matching force. Gabriel had fallen to half-step supreme and could be held at bay. Now, with Gabriel's authority grafted into him, Gao Li's combat power as the Endless Lord truly ascended to the supreme realm. He had become a genuine supreme being. Perfect. Lucifer applauded from the side, admiring what he had wrought. No one else could have absorbed power this cleanly, let alone 100%. But then, who told heaven to cook up the Holy Son's return? They created new Saint Father and Saint Mother statuses all on their own. Lucifer's meaning was clear. Gabriel's power was stamped with heaven's imprint. It should have been incompatible in full with any outsider. But Gao Li was different. Gao Li had been the manipulator behind the phantom demon, the one who had left an imprint on God's essence, the creator of night magic itself. Whether natural or supernatural in prophecy, the strings had been pulled by him. That gave Gao Li an accidental double status, the equivalent of both Saint Father and Saint Mother, concentrated on one person. With that imprint, Gabriel's power accepted Gao Li without resistance. Even so, the force of a true supreme being was enormous. Gabriel's authority had been violently poured into his body. Gao Li felt as if he would be torn apart. He forced himself to suppress and digest the influx of power while Lucifer, finished admiring, strolled back to Constantine. See, I told you I was good to you, Lucifer said, beaming. Look how much your friend gained. Constantine managed a weak smile. You favor your family. That's true, Lucifer shrugged. Who told him to do something no hell demon ever managed? Constantine cleared his throat. What about that girl? What did you do to her? Lucifer only grinned wickedly. Who knows? Do you have time to worry about others? Let her rest in peace, Constantine whispered. I summoned you to deal with Gabriel so she could rest. Lucifer's expression softened at the confession. Ah, noble Constantine, willing to sacrifice himself to send her to heaven. He inhaled deeply, unusually mellow. All right then, it's time for us to go, John. With that, he grabbed Constantine's wrist and began to drag him away. But a few steps in, Constantine's body suddenly grew impossibly heavy in Lucifer's grasp. The ground under them gave, a great pit pressed into the earth, and Lucifer could not budge him. What's happening? Lucifer's voice tightened. He should have been able to pull the earth itself. Nothing should have rooted him so. Only one power in the universe could force that kind of immovability, the power of God. Is it heaven's summons? Lucifer snarled. This can't be. John Constantine committed suicide. He shouldn't be able to return to heaven unless a realization slammed into him. Constantine hadn't merely killed himself. He had sacrificed himself deliberately to summon Lucifer, to bargain the way he did, all for the sake of Angela and for humanity. It was, in a word, a holy self-sacrifice. A radiant light flared up behind Constantine. The space there rippled as if opening directly to heaven, golden clouds and distant hymns spilling through. Constantine's body, which had been buried deep in the ground, slowly rose, floating upward toward heaven with a triumphant smile on his face. You still fell for my trick, Lucifer. No, this soul belongs to me. Constantine didn't answer. He simply gave Lucifer the middle finger. Lucifer, however, was not so easily fooled. With supreme force, he stopped Constantine, leaning in to whisper in his ear. Don't even think about it, John Constantine. I want you to live. I want you to live until the day I harvest your soul. You'll live. Only then can it be proven that your soul belongs to hell for all time. Lucifer's hand suddenly plunged into Constantine's chest. Constantine screamed, an animal, keening sound of pure agony. It felt as if all the pain of his life had been concentrated into this one instant. But Lucifer's power had a strange effect too. In the blink of an eye, Constantine's fatal wounds closed. The blood loss stopped, his body became whole again. Only his mind remained battered. After doing this, Lucifer flung Constantine aside and vanished, his face dark as thunder. Lucifer's aura is gone, someone shouted. Nabu, the God King at Fate Tower, was the first to notice. His courage returned at once. To the battlefield, he cried. With a flash of golden light, Nabu teleported himself and the others to the sky above the hospital. Beneath them, Gabriel's aura shone like a beacon in the night. But it was faint, so faint that Nabu felt it had been crushed down to almost nothing. Gabriel's power seems suppressed, reduced to rock bottom with almost no chance of recovery, Nabu observed. He sensed immediately that this was the work of the Endless Lord. Perfect. If the Endless Lord had restrained Gabriel, they had the advantage. Nabu rose to the occasion, assuming the proud bearing of the Order God System's leader. Gabriel, you who would sow chaos in the material world, Nabu thundered. As an archangel of heaven, you dare conspire with the devil king of hell? In the name of the Lord of Order, I, God King Nabu, will never allow you to disturb the material world. This is my duty as a guardian. He spoke loudly, putting on the full armor of rhetoric before unleashing his might. To the human magic masters watching, it was impressive. Nabu was truly the pinnacle of their order. He clasped his hands, and a rain of Egyptian ankhs entwined with heavy chains descended from the sky, descending like a crushing seal on the space below. But Gao Li, concentrated on suppressing and digesting Gabriel's power, felt a sharp jolt of alarm. His body's instinct in the physical world detected an incoming assault. Reflexively, he countered. Boom! Gold-hued infinite magic surged outward, fused with Gabriel's power, and shot straight up. The shockwave hit Nabu's attack like a tidal wall, overwhelming it instantly. Gabriel's power was not weaker than Nabu's, and the endless style had a property that disintegrated and scattered magic. Nabu, as a magic master who had progressed from human sorcery, carried a particularly large proportion of magic in his divine power, which made him unusually vulnerable to Gao Li's influence. In a single clash, the Order divine power collapsed. The result was inevitable. Nabu was not only outmatched, he was reined in. The casual counterattack sent Nabu flying. Ah! Nabu screamed as his body tumbled hundreds of meters, helpless. The magic masters stared, stunned. The mighty God King, unable to withstand a single assault? They exchanged bewildered glances. Who attacked me? Nabu bellowed. Gao Li couldn't keep his instinctive counter from spilling into the external world any longer. He diverted a sliver of energy outward and stepped forward. They saw the one who had emerged, the Endless Lord himself, Gao Li, walking out with an oppressive aura. And within that aura was something everyone recognized. My God! That's Gabriel's aura. Gabriel was devoured by the Endless Lord. Has Gabriel already been defeated? They were dumbstruck. The subdued, sputtering power they'd been sensing had been coming from inside Gao Li all along, completely consumed and absorbed. No wonder Gabriel's presence had been suppressed. It had been swallowed. The idea that a supreme being could be utterly consumed by the Lord of Magic struck the onlookers as unbearably cruel. Boston and Sargon both broke into a cold sweat. Even the august human angel king could not escape being devoured by the Lord of Magic. Gao Li's audacity and skill left them reeling. Master Ochi was the quickest to react, bowing and speaking hurriedly. Respected Endless Lord, that was a misunderstanding. We came to stop Gabriel. At Ochi's explanation, everyone snapped back to reality. They had watched Nabu attack Gao Li. If they didn't clear this up quickly, there might be blood on the field unnecessarily. Afterward, the truth made sense. In the recent battle with the giant ferocious beast, the general impression in the magic world was that Gao Li had been stronger than Nabu. Seeing Nabu's ignominious defeat here only reinforced that belief. Nabu himself, mortified by his poor showing, lingered in the air, unwilling to return to the spotlight. Gao Li, seeing the embarrassment, dismissed it with a small wave. The Magic Masters breathed out in relief, and to save their leader's face, they bowed again to Gao Li. Since you've eliminated the threat Gabriel posed to the material world, we express our deepest gratitude, Master Ochi said. We will take our leave. Gao Li inclined his head slightly. Nabu attempted to regain dignity. He gave a distant nod and a stiff bow to Gao Li, then teleported himself and the others away. They all left quickly. Gao Li didn't want to linger. The auras of 5 supreme beings, Mammon, Gao Li, Gabriel, Lucifer, and Nabu, were scattered across the scene now, and such concentrations of power would draw attention from across the universe. A Lord of Magic and Satan of Hell crossing paths could not go unnoticed. Gao Li reflected as he departed. Had he truly sent Nabu flying? Even though he hadn't finished digesting Gabriel's power, it was already formidable, proof of how vast a supreme being's strength could be. More importantly, Gao Li understood why his presence restrained Nabu. Magic is strange and versatile. Divine power is not simply an advanced form of magic, they stand on the same level. Together, they are among the creative forces that form what might be called the divine realm. Magic's miracle is its ability to fuse with almost any other energy, becoming part of it and enhancing it. That's why anyone connected to the magic world, the giant ferocious beast, Nabu, Gabriel, carries some magic. For a magic master like Nabu, magic is a central component of his order divine power. The greater the proportion of magic in his divine power, the more he would be restrained by Gao Li's endless style. Nabu felt that restraint now more painfully than ever. He also felt he had lost face, and that sting of embarrassment kept him hovering until his pride could be soothed. Once they were gone, the scene quieted. Long afterward, Constantine woke in a single hospital room. He opened his eyes to find Gao Li by the window, idly toying with a glowing golden ring. Gao Li, Constantine croaked. Oh, you're awake, Gao Li said, looking up. Don't worry, you've been thoroughly examined. Your body is very healthy. I have to admit, Master Lu's work is excellent. Memories came flooding back, and Constantine blinked. Angela? You think of your little girlfriend first, Gao Li teased. Romantic to the end, she's been rescued too. Constantine nodded, then heard Gao Li mutter, half in complaint, half in amusement. But you were reckless. I didn't know I'd have to face an opponent of Lucifer's level when I arrived. If I'd known, I would have left earlier, Gao Li added. A force like the Satan of Hell is not someone to provoke lightly at my current stage. Constantine gave a faint, rueful smile. How could he be your opponent? From what happened, Lucifer did you a favor. You and the Devil King are like one big happy family now. Don't make jokes about hell, Gao Li rolled his eyes. You didn't know this before you summoned Lucifer, did you? Otherwise you would have teased me earlier. Constantine sighed. It was a last resort. You saw how dangerous things were. No, let me be honest. It was your personal experience that prompted it. Gao Li looked at him. Although you can tussle with Gabriel, Gabriel didn't need to tussle back. All he had to do was find a chance to pierce Angela with the Spear of Longinus. That would have been easy. So to deal with Mammon's threat, Gowley said, you decided to invite an even greater danger, Lucifer, into the material world? I didn't choose at random. Constantine protested. I had reason to think Lucifer and the Holy Father had an agreement that kept him from interfering in the material world with full force. Think about it. Someone as notorious as me in hell, who once angered Lucifer so that he came to collect my soul when I was at death's door. How could I still be alive now if he simply wanted me dead? Gowley stroked his chin. It did make a sort of twisted sense. With Constantine's level of ability, any supreme being could have ended him with ease. Certainly Lucifer could have. So you figured the worst that could happen was Lucifer taking your soul, and that would still stop Gabriel and Mammon. And I had a contingency, Constantine said. Didn't I trick Lucifer again? Even in the second worst case scenario, I would die and my soul would go to heaven. Gowley chuckled. You're bold because you're useful. You actually bet that Lucifer, to prevent your soul going to heaven, would rather heal you and let you live. Constantine grinned. The idea came from watching the Eternal Punishment Legion forcefully heal me. Hell's power isn't only destructive. I used Hell's power to save myself. He glanced at the golden ring in Gowley's hand. But what about you? Did you really absorb Gabriel's power? It seems so. Heaven hasn't come knocking yet, Gowley replied. It'll take time to fully digest it. A supreme being's power is still enormous. Then won't you carry heaven's imprint with you? Won't you be left with a power debt? Constantine asked, frowning. Absorbing Gabriel could mark you forever. Gowley wagged a finger. You underestimate the Lord of Magic. When it comes to perceiving and processing power imprints, who is more skilled than I? Normally, you're right. An imprint is like an unbreachable security system. But I don't have to break heaven's imprint. He smiled, tossing the endless golden magician ring lightly in his palm. Because of the Holy Father and the saints, well, in short, I enjoy very high heavenly authority. I have permissions close to administrator level. Gowley let the ring dissolve into scintillating magic that dispersed into the air. This way, I can log directly into the core of heaven's power imprint through legitimate channels and then use my advantages as the Lord of Magic. The reason I need so much time to digest and absorb it is that I must use my magic debt imprint to slowly erode and replace heaven's imprint. Marking God's power isn't new to me. I'm quite practiced at it. Besides, Gabriel's power isn't anywhere near as pure as the giant ferocious beast's divine essence. Constantine understood as soon as he heard it. So this was what they meant by the strongest fortress is often breached from within. It made sense. Otherwise, given Gowley's character, he would sooner abandon Gabriel's power than risk such a huge danger for nothing. The principle is simple, Gowley continued, but it depends on a string of coincidences. My unique status inside the heaven system, my identity as the Lord of Magic, and Gabriel having defied God's teachings and fallen into her near-fallen state. On top of that, Satan personally stripped that power away. Lucifer would never tolerate anything he'd tampered with having ties to heaven. He would have cut it off long ago. All those factors together made replacing the imprint relatively easy. Gowley stood, summarized briefly, and pushed open the door. I've already covered your hospital and exam fees. You can be discharged once you're walking on your own. I'll be leaving now. Back at Fadian Group headquarters, Gowley sank into a plush executive chair and began to tally up what he'd gained during this stretch. He didn't really need to count. Since the end of the Holy Sun's advent until now, more than half a year had passed, and his main cumulative gain in the system was an S-rank reward. It made sense. He hadn't reshaped the world. He'd just handled a lot of Batman's long-term enemies. People like the Joker, while notorious, were largely confined to Gotham. Even if allowed to live, their impact on the wider world would be limited. Most of Batman's rogues were similar, so they hadn't produced world-scale changes. As for Gabriel and Mammon, judging by Constantine's audacious summoning of Lucifer, even if Gowley hadn't intervened, Constantine could likely have stopped them with Lucifer's help. The outcome would have been similar. With Fadian Group's sustained influence added in, it all deserved to be consolidated into a single S-rank draw. Let's draw, Let's draw. Wait, don't draw yet. I'll draw after I go back to Marvel. Gao Li tamped down his urge to pull the reward immediately. If he drew a physical item now, he couldn't take it back to the Marvel Universe. He'd been in the DC Universe for over a year and was itching to return and see what had changed. Although he'd cultivated powerful abilities usable in both worlds, overall his DC side strengths were far stronger. The Endless style, the Limitless Golden Oryu style now, could be used freely in the DC Universe, but only up to 3 times in the Marvel Universe. After its upgrade, each transformation demanded more magic, and his soul capacity hadn't increased, so the number of transformations he could carry over had likely dropped to 1. It was like the file size for the Limitless Golden Oryu style had ballooned, while his soul's storage remained fixed. His other top ability, the Shining Memory, was a physical memory and couldn't be transferred either. Although he could use Gaia memory technology in the Marvel Universe, he didn't know where to extract the necessary concepts, perhaps from the Infinity Stones? Even though he also had very strong artifacts in Marvel, like the Beyond Zector, his trump cards were still worse off compared to his DC arsenal. He'd bring the S-rank reward into Marvel and use it there. Deciding that, Gao Li prepared to cross over. He infused magic into his soul, just enough capacity for 1 transformation of the Limitless Golden Oryu style, and a little left over for small spells. With his soul full, he lay back in the life support pod, closed his eyes, and activated the transverse. Transverse, activate. He felt the familiar pressure, as if plunging into deep water. He sank, hit the bottom, then floated back up and opened his eyes. He was above the river of time again. All right, first things first, draw the prize. The lottery machine flickered into being, condensed into a speck of light, and then congealed into a physical object in his hand. Gao Li's eyes snapped open. It was a physical reward. In his palm lay a pitch-black card case embossed with a golden dragon's head. It was the card case that transformed into Kamen Rider Ryuki. The V-buckle, the driver used by Ryuki, was intrinsically linked to the case and would manifest automatically when the user looked into a reflective surface. Nice, that saved him from having to reverse engineer the driver. As expected of an S-rank reward, he murmured. Complete and usable right away, unlike that Desire driver before. And it even has a contract monster. He drew an advent card from the case. The illustration showed a roaring oriental long dragon, the mirror world beast dragon Crimson, commonly called Muso dragon. It wasn't as powerful as Gao Li's current forms, but it had a unique ability, mirror world shuttle. Toying with the card case, Gao Li glanced back at the timeline and a plan formed. He stepped into the timeline from outside the river of time. Whatever he intended to do, he had to re-enter the world this way first. He didn't go straight to Tony. He deactivated his hyperclock up and wandered the streets, checking for changes since he'd left. From his earlier hyperdimensional battle with the Ancient One, he knew he could instantaneously alter historical trajectories. What new ripples would his past actions have made? Thinking it through, Gao Li realized most of his Hydra handiwork had been hidden in the world's shadows. On the surface, not much would have changed. Red Skull had been sucked away by the Tesseract and Hydra's collapse was still fixed history. If anything, his actions had only accelerated things. The big differences he could already see were 2, the Yggdrasil Foundation's establishment and the absence of Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Steve Rogers had never emerged as Captain America. Since Red Skull had already been dealt with by Gao Li beforehand, there had been no catastrophic bombing plot that forced Steve to sacrifice himself. As for the Winter Soldier, Gao Li wondered whether that meant Tony's father hadn't died. Good news for Tony, if so. He could check Howard Stark's death date online. Howard was a public figure, after all. He also noted the Yggdrasil Foundation's footprints across the Marvel market. Everyday household brands now carried the Yggdrasil logo. But at its core, the Foundation produced civilian products. Others could have filled that space. After a quick survey and a more defined plan, Gao Li decided to seek out Tony Stark. To give himself maximum leeway to patch the past, Gao Li picked the 3-month mark after his initial disappearance with the Ancient One to re-enter the timeline. That created a window, 3 months of history, where Gao Li did not exist, that he could later manipulate if needed with hyperclock up. Inside the newly renovated Stark Tower, Tony Stark stood in his high-tech lab, frowning deeply. The lab overflowed with devices and instruments. Data and schematics danced across projection screens like constellations forming and reforming. Tony moved from station to station, blueprints running under his fingertips. He was building a new Iron Man suit, but his motivation now was different, born not only of engineering ambition, but of a new, unsettling awareness. The footage of Gao Li's disappearance had convinced Tony that the world held things he could not explain. Sorcerers, ancient powers. Sorcerer, he muttered under his breath. Anger and curiosity twisted together. The man who'd appeared in that surveillance clip had radiated a power so vast and archaic, it shattered Tony's assumptions about what technology could achieve alone. Searching for Gao Li had forced Tony to widen his lens. The mysteries of the world extended far beyond circuits and alloys. By the time he'd spent 3 months chasing leads, Tony had reached an answer he hadn't wanted to admit. The solution resembled a Kamen Rider, the very device Gao Li had used. Gao Li's Kamen Rider had become Tony's source of inspiration. Night after night, Tony reworked his designs, trying to bridge technology with whatever lay beyond his previous understanding. Finally, the machine's word, metal and circuitry assembled, and a new Iron Man suit took shape, its arc reactor glowing a steady blue. "This is my answer," Tony said, clenching his fist. Every component was a synthesis of his knowledge and the weird, new data he'd uncovered. This suit would be his weapon against whatever else lurked in the world. Jarvis's voice cut in at that moment. "Mr. Stark, you have a visitor." "No, I'm busy," Tony replied, already distracted. "I think you should see him," Jarvis persisted. "It's Mr. Gori Parker." Tony froze. Gori, he'd been searching for him for months with no luck, and now he just returned? Jarvis sent a clip from the lobby. It was Gori, undeniable. "All right, send him up," Tony said, then quickly added, "and hide the suit. Don't let him see it yet." He worried Gori would accuse him of copying the Kamen Rider, and Tony wasn't ready for that. He also considered the possibility that the visitor might be an imposter, but a 10-minute conversation in the lab dispelled that notion. The man before him knew the same technical details Tony and he had discussed, and in classic Gori fashion, had already annoyed Tony enough for him to want to get rid of his guest as quickly as possible. "Good," Tony muttered through gritted teeth. "Seems you've gotten a lot more sharp-tongued in 3 months." He forced himself to rein in his irritation and play the reliable host. "I won't ask any more about the other stuff. What exactly happened that day?" Gori, sitting across from him, dropped the teasing tone and answered seriously. "Actually, there's no harm in telling you. Besides, I've already fixed that problem. With your skills, I'm sure you've dug up something in the 3 months since the incident, like Kamartaj, the place where certain sorcerers gather." "I did find references to Kamartaj," Tony frowned, "but it felt like some kind of magical interference. Whenever I tried to locate it for real, I found nothing." Gori nodded. "That makes sense. Kamartaj has a lot of strange spells. Anyway, it's enough that you know the name. The bald woman who attacked me that day was the Ancient One, the leader of the Kamartaj sorcerers." "Why would she attack you?" Tony asked. Gori hedged. "I'm not completely sure. There were unexpected complications. She failed to accomplish her goal and, by accident, teleported me to an alien civilization." He kept some details vague on purpose. Leaving out the absolute time point minimized the risk of altering it further and made future repairs to space-time easier. If it later turned out Tony needed the absolute time point, Gori could always travel back and tell him, but it would be far harder to erase what Tony already knew. Besides, Gori wasn't lying outright. He had, in fact, visited an alien civilization. Alien civilization? Tony's shock was obvious. "There are really aliens?" "Yes, lots of them. I came back with a lot of new technology, dealt with the Ancient One, and then came to find you." Gori's tone was light, but the content was almost impossible for Tony to process. It sounded otherworldly. "Anyway, I came to tell you I'm fine, and to tell you again that I won't be joining Stark Industries." Tony blinked. "Why not?" Gori sighed. "Some time ago I discovered I have a distant relative who left a will naming me as an heir. I have to go home and take over the family business." Tony scoffed. "What family could possibly compare to the $50 million a year I was offering you?" Gao Li replied calmly. The family business is called the Yggdrasil Foundation. I'm sure you've heard of it. You've even used Yggdrasil products, right? Tony's eyes went wide. The Yggdrasil Foundation? You mean the Yggdrasil Foundation, that one that used to try to piggyback off Stark Industries? Gao Li fell silent. He'd expected a fuller reaction, not that the Stark family's memory of Yggdrasil ended there. He stood, said goodbye, and left Tony with a head full of unanswered questions. How did Gao Li inherit Yggdrasil? How did he handle the Ancient One? What was alien technology like? Tony's pride kept him from begging for details. In the past, if Tony wanted to know something, he solved it himself. He trusted his own genius to manage anything. Gao Li, meanwhile, had plenty to do. Back at the World War II time point, he'd already completed the legal paperwork to ensure he would inherit the Yggdrasil Foundation in the future, well before the Ancient One's attack. According to a plan drafted with top lawyers, Gao Li only needed to present himself as Legendo Noah's distant relative to claim his inheritance. While arranging that, he also checked up on Howard Stark and found that Howard still died when Tony was young. That made Gao Li frown. He briefly suspected some historical corrective force or convergence of timelines, but it wasn't surprising in the end. In the original history, Howard's death wasn't a personal feud with the Winter Soldier. Hydra simply had the mission objective to kill him. Even without Bucky Barnes, Hydra had plenty of operatives to carry out the assassination. The way things unfolded, Howard stopped on the mountain road and was killed, was a plausible result of natural developments. Gao Li had not left any instructions to steer those events. The next plan, Gao Li mused. First, see how Shocker is doing. Can I take it over cleanly? For investigation, the obvious first lead was S.H.I.E.L.D. In his previous life, S.H.I.E.L.D. had earned the nickname Snake S.H.I.E.L.D. online. But S.H.I.E.L.D. was a professional intelligence agency. If Gao Li wanted to investigate without exposing himself, he needed the right approach. Kamen Rider Ryuki, he said suddenly, eyes lighting up. What Kamen Rider was better for intelligence gathering than Ryuki, who could freely enter and exit the mirror world? With some magic to help, the plan was nearly foolproof. Gao Li moved fast. After finalizing the legal transfers and inheriting most of Yggdrasil's shares, he could fully focus on the mirror world. My first time exploring the mirror world, I'm actually a little excited, he told himself. In front of his bathroom mirror, Gao Li took out the Ryuki card box and waved it at the glass. The next second, something strange happened. A V-buckle image appeared in the mirror, flipped, and attached itself to his waist. Transformation. One shot. Gao Li jammed the card box into the belt. Ryuki's armor, like a pasted image, materialized from the mirror and clung to his body. Let's go! He leapt into the mirror as if diving into water, seamlessly merging with it. Inside the mirror world, a sleek vehicle waited, the Ride Shooter. The Ride Shooter was the machine that allowed riders to enter the mirror world. Since entering from the real world causes space-time distortion, the Ride Shooter protected the rider during the transition. This reward really deserves its S rank, Gao Li said to himself. It didn't just give a contract beast, it even included mirror world transport. With the Ride Shooter, he could save time inside the mirror world and study the mechanics of travel between realities. He remembered that ordinary people entering the mirror world suffer material decomposition. The rider system lasts longer, but even it cannot stay in the mirror world indefinitely. With magical concealment, Gao Li could travel back and forth several times to reset the duration. He rode the machine into the mirror world, then got off and looked around. Everything was inverted. Surfaces that reflected light could be used to peek at what happened in the real world. Sounds traveled both ways. That made nearly any place accessible for investigation. No matter how secret a location, if he moved and listened in the mirror world, he would be hard to stop. This world reminds me of the Ancient One's mirror dimension, Gao Li thought. They might be similar in nature, but they're not the same. He filed that for later research. Right now, the priority was S.H.I.E.L.D. and Shocker. After a period of investigation, Gao Li had a solid picture of Hydra's state, or rather, what Hydra had become. Hydra was an empty shell in name. In practice, Shocker had taken over. Shocker's reach rivaled and even exceeded the old Hydra. Its members were embedded at all levels, even among members of Congress, and S shield had been so deeply infiltrated it was almost completely absorbed by Shocker. Shocker's primary leaders were Baron Strucker, who led Shocker's birth forces tied to the original Hydra roots, and Alexander Pierce, who ran Shocker's worldwide operations and sat as chairman on the World Security Council. Loyalty among the inner circle was absolute. Cult-like pyramid organizations turn devotion into fanaticism, and once their object of worship is real, fanatical devotion becomes unstoppable. Gao Li's next move was simple. He used a special method to summon Shocker's high-ranking cadres. Practically, it meant they woke to find a letter on their pillows instructing them to attend a meeting at a specified time. The method was brutal and effective. The leaders understood the implication immediately. The letter was a quiet threat. The sender could kill them all with ease, and he already had access to Shocker's inner roster. It was a display of power and a warning. Stay in line. At the gathering, Gao Li publicly opened the Shocker secret box, fulfilling a long-circulated prophecy. Only the founder, the holy and wise Grand Master, and the fated leader can open the Shocker secret box, the record had said. Gao Li had prepared for this. He had taken the transformation one shot before the meeting, which temporarily introduced Orphanok factors into his body and allowed him to pass the box's detection. The high-ranking Shocker members watched wide-eyed. This secret box was from World War II. Modern technology had been unable to open it. Gao Li's public demonstration, coupled with the earlier quiet threat and his mysterious methods, left them with no leverage. His letter had been as good as a knife to their throats. Having shown he could access the box, his takeover of Shocker became a fait accompli, an easy consequence of his preparations. That certainty gave Gao Li confidence about the absolute time point. He had failed many times in the Witch's Sabbath ritual inside a mental space simulation, but that had been simulation, not reality. More importantly, he now controlled a real, massive organization, something repeated time reversals couldn't buy. That had all come from the preparations he'd set in motion years earlier. While inventorying Shocker's assets, he noticed news about Tony's safe return from a weapons demonstration in the Middle East. That was expected. If Tony Stark, already the mind behind the Iron Man suit, couldn't handle terrorists, he'd be in the wrong line of work. Tony thought he had hidden his Iron Man development well, preventing Gao Li from teasing him about borrowing from Kamen Rider, not realizing Gao Li had seen it on the timeline. Gao Li had deliberately left a 3-month gap during which Gao Li did not exist, so Tony was not obscured by any temporal entanglement and could be viewed clearly. Gao Li could only see the timeline as a side effect of hyperclock up. He couldn't actively browse it like a database. He could step out of time and look down on it, which worked for a few individuals but was hopelessly inefficient for investigating a vast organization with complex causal entanglements. A little later, at a glittering party full of celebrities and dignitaries, Tony Stark, smiling and magnetic, moved through the crowd like a man entirely comfortable as the center of attention. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted someone he hadn't expected. "Hey, Gao Li, you look like a lost lamb. Need me to rescue you?" Tony swaggered over and raised an eyebrow, teasing. Gao Li raised his wine glass without enthusiasm. "No need. I don't handle these noisy places well." Even in the DC universe, when Bruce hosted his birthday, Gao Li had stayed at the mansion to keep Little Guang company. He disliked loud, crowded environments. "I figured as much," Tony said. "I can't imagine you at a party like this." Gao Li sighed. "Social obligations are unavoidable, especially when so many people invite you." Tony chuckled. "Now you understand my old troubles. The Yggdrasil Foundation's largest shareholder status almost rivals me. You can't avoid being the center of attention. Congrats on joining the club." "I'll be a conscientious capitalist, not one to be hung on a lamppost," Gao Li replied dryly. "Haven't you heard? The Yggdrasil Foundation benefits the whole world. It made a lot of useful household products." That wasn't entirely true. Many of those ideas were plans and blueprints Gao Li had planted back in World War II, but the claim would help cement Yggdrasil's future growth. Tony grinned. "The conscientious grand capitalist looks like a lost child at a party. Only I can enjoy being surrounded by thousands. You've still got a lot to learn." Gao Li's mouth twitched. "You sure know how to flatter yourself. It fits your narcissistic style, and I don't object to that. Tony laughed. Narcissistic? No, that's just a fact. Like my talent and strength. I'm always dazzling, no matter where I am, just like. He suddenly hesitated, and his expression flickered with something like reluctance. Section 116, Gao Li asked at the right moment, "Did something happen to you in the Middle East?" The reports only hinted at it, no details. Did you bribe them to bury an embarrassing past? Tony snapped, irritated. What nonsense? When was I ever embarrassed in the Middle East? Fine. Since you showed me Kamen Rider, I'll show you my genius invention. The trip was unforgettable, he went on, waxing theatrical. I was attacked by a bunch of terrorists, bullets, rockets, the whole works. They thought they could take me out easily. Ridiculous. They didn't know how powerful the Iron Man suit is. Gao Li raised an eyebrow. What was the situation? And the suit is? Tony puffed his chest and began to boast, growing more animated as he described the suit and his performance in it. Oh, Gao Li, you wouldn't believe it. The moment they moved in, I snapped on the suit and became their worst nightmare. I soared into the sky, used the suit's weapons to crush them. Their attacks were useless. They couldn't come close. They only watched as I took them down one by one. As Tony talked, he got more excited and finally invited Gao Li to visit the suit at Stark Tower. Gao Li agreed. Even though he now had multiple Kamen Rider systems and black technology that could reduce an Iron Man suit to scrap, he wouldn't underestimate Tony's pride and invention. Tony, for his part, had always been curious about Gao Li's so-called alien tech and saw the invite as a chance to pry into it. Days of technical exchange followed. The more they talked, the more frustrated Tony felt. Reluctantly, he had to admit, Gao Li had actually overtaken him in some areas. In only a few months, Gao Li seemed to have gone through a kind of rapid evolution. Tony refused to let that stand forever. He was sure it was only temporary. With his intelligence and talent, he would outpace Gao Li again. But he overlooked one crucial fact. Gao Li wouldn't wait. As Tony pushed forward, so would Gao Li. Meanwhile, Gao Li's plan was unfolding. From their first conversation at that party, he had learned something important. Tony Stark, with or without the suit, was still Tony Stark, the same cynical, spoiled playboy at heart. The Iron Man identity in later timelines wasn't about the suit, but the man inside it, the Iron Heart. Without a push, Tony would stay the same. Gao Li knew his earlier disappearance might have been an opportunity for Tony to change, but Gao Li had returned before any real transformation could take hold, so he decided to manufacture the hardship himself. He used Shocker, the organization that hadn't existed in the spiritual space, as his instrument. Shocker had talent, numbers, and good weapons, but it needed a breakthrough to challenge something like Iron Man. Gao Li updated Shocker with cutting-edge tech and won over its leaders. Under his guidance, Shocker became far more powerful than before, breaking through the technological bottleneck Earth had imposed. When Tony invited him to Arizona again, Gao Li recognized the perfect chance to force the test. Tony's private jet awaited them at the airport the next morning. "Why are you alone? I thought you'd bring Miss Potts." Gao Li and Tony walked the private passage, trading idle jabs. Tony muttered, "We had a little spat recently. You know, friction happens." Gao Li grinned. "Of course, I know it's probably your problem. Miss Potts is much more reasonable than you. If roads didn't work so much and was so hard to reach, I wouldn't have to travel with you," Tony said, rolling his eyes. "Too late to complain. Come on," Gao Li laughed. They boarded under a blue sky. The jet's interior was plush, premium seats with massage, an entertainment system loaded with games and movies. On arrival, a luxurious motorcade rolled up, everything prearranged by Tony. "Come on, let me show you how someone with actual wealth uses it," Tony said, sweeping a hand over a modified ride that glittered with custom finishes. The cabin had leather seats, a wine cabinet, an in-car phone, every comfort. Gao Li, also wealthy but less practiced in ostentation, inwardly admired Tony's lifestyle. The car sped away from the city into green, winding roads and eventually reached Tony's secluded villa, an opulent resort hidden deep in the forest. The mansion was grand, its gardens immaculate, the air serene. They strolled among artworks and classic cars. Tony proudly explained each piece. "I'm not criticizing," Tony said, clapping Gao Li on the shoulder. "You should learn to enjoy life more. Money isn't just about having it, you have to use it." Gowlee stood on the terrace, looking over the trees and the lake. His mind, however, was on the plan. The villa was beautiful. Destroying it would be wasteful. Better a more public stage. Tony's planned tour of the Grand Canyon the next day made him smile. Perfect. They drove to the canyon and wound along the scenic route. The view was breathtaking. I only saw this on TV before, Gowlee remarked. It's more impressive in person. Before they could finish, a massive explosion ripped through a deserted part of the canyon. Someone had blown out a rock face, and a black fighter jet dove down toward their vehicle. Holy crap, what's happening? Are we under attack? Gowlee called out, feigning shock. How do you have enemies everywhere? That's the price of being famous, Tony said, gripping the wheel and flipping the car into combat mode. But don't worry, I've got this. Blue afterburners flared as the car leapt forward. Inside, Tony's suit automatically deployed, encasing him in armor. Jarvis, scan for hostiles, Tony ordered. Jarvis ran a sweep. Tony's visor filled with contacts. Tony's eyes widened. So many. Where did they all come from? The enemy package wasn't just a handful of mercenaries. It was organized like a small modern war force, right in the U.S. Tony's confidence was steady. I brought the Kamen Rider system just in case. It's in the trunk. Want me to? No need. Whoever they are, they've underestimated me, Tony said. Then explosives slid under the car like crawling spiders and latched to the chassis. Boom! The car detonated, sending metal and bodies flying. Tony was blasted out of the vehicle. Gowlee landed more than 10 meters away. Of course, Gowlee had chosen his landing. His cyborg body absorbed the impact. He had planned the bomb's yield down to the last detail. The Kamen Rider gear had been separated from him, a convenient excuse not to transform immediately. You're okay. Thank God. Get to cover, Tony shouted, dazed but scrambling back into battle readiness. The canyon filled with fire and smoke. The attackers, equipped with high-end weaponry, poured on a relentless assault. Tony's suit took hits, but he kept fighting, moving, and firing. Damn, because this is a portable suit, the damage is worse, he muttered. The armor he wore resembled the Mark V, designed for portability, compact enough to be packed into luggage. That portability made it more fragile, fewer defenses, reduced systems, limited flight. This version could be deployed from a car and could fly short distances, but its protection was inferior. When Tony faced the enemies head-on, their weapons showed their true horror. Missiles and lasers swept across the canyon. Damage warnings flooded Tony's HUD. What weapons are these? The destructive power. What the hell? Even a fully intact suit would struggle against such firepower. Artillery boomed and shells detonated, churning the ground into blasts. Tony dodged and sought angles to strike. His weapons did damage. He shot down jets and left several tanks belching black smoke, but the effect was limited. The enemy vehicles seemed to be made from an unknown, incredibly tough alloy. Lasers left only small charred marks. Missiles crippled function, but didn't truly destroy the armored hulls. Their crews, likely well protected, could still operate defenses. Tony's chest tightened. Their offense was brutal, and their defense was astonishing. This force was stronger than many national special operations units he knew. His earlier boasting felt foolish. He needed a new approach and fast. Jarvis, track movement patterns and analyze tactics, he ordered, hoping he could find a weakness to exploit. Even using every ounce of strength he had left, Tony could only manage so much. His Iron Man suit was already in tatters. As for the downed fighter jet, Tony had spotted the pilot ejecting and was about to fly over to intercept him for questioning when several thick laser beams lanced out a few meters after he rose, slamming him back to the ground. This is bullshit. Dizzy and disoriented, Tony tried to get up and found multiple sections of the armor stripped away, revealing the suit's internal frame. The damage had rendered it almost useless. A bitter laugh escaped him. The power systems were shot. The weapon that had been his salvation had become an iron coffin, weighing him down. Thankfully, the suit still had enough function to let him remove it without needing to drag its dead weight on his own. He pulled the damaged armor off and recalled Jarvis's earlier scan. If there was one thing left that could save him now, it was Gowlee's improvised kit. He'd stored it close by. Tony pointed toward where he remembered it was when a small missile, tailing an urgent red flare, arced startlingly close from the side. Fuck! Cold ran through Tony like ice. For an instant, he felt frozen to the core. He saw Gao Li lunge from behind a boulder and shove him further back. Boom! The missile detonated with violent force. The blast threw Gao Li off the cliff. No! Tony's vision blurred red with fury and shock, but the concussion left him stunned and ringing. He couldn't hear right away. Rational thought kicked back in faster than the anger. He scrambled for Gao Li's briefcase, ignoring the danger. What he didn't know was that much of Shocker's firepower had been calibrated by the G3X AI chip implanted by Gao Li, intended to look deadly and terrifying, but once computed, mostly designed to miss. The spectacle was the point. Tony, unaware of that nuance, raced on with his heart thudding. He reached the briefcase, breathless and muddied. Gao Li, damn it. Tony forced a hard edge into his voice and tore the case open. He recognized the contents immediately, equipment Gao Li had used at Stark Tower. He fished out the transformation one-shot drink and downed it at a gulp, then attached the phase system to his waist. Enter! Standing by! Gao Li's voice and grin flashed in his mind, and as if mimicking him, Tony shouted, Transform! Tony slid the phase phone into the belt. A crimson photonic flow, like blood-red filaments suspended in space, rushed out and wrapped his body, complete. A mechanical voice intoned as a burst of light flared. When it faded, Tony stood encased head to toe in two-tone plated armor, silver with red trim, his face completely masked. Kamen Rider phase, Tony Stark's version. He had no time to revel in the sensation. The enemy waited across the field. I'll make you pay. He plunged into the gunfire, leapt in front of a tank and slammed the enter button. Crimson smash. He remembered Gao Li's moves perfectly and executed them. The kick blew the tank apart, but when he checked the wreckage, there were no bodies. Frowning, he realized the tanks were unmanned. Automated units. Aside from the pilot he'd seen ejected, there were no other living combatants. The smooth, precise control of the battlefield and its formidable offense and defense spoke to terrifying technical mastery. When had such a force appeared in the world? Relieved that he wasn't hunting people, Tony fought with remorseless efficiency. In the end, he cleared the area, but the phase armor was badly damaged. The transformation, one-shot system was meant to be temporary, almost consumable, so even without the blasts, it would have burned out. Gao Li had deliberately planned the enemy force to be just within what phase could handle to stage the spectacle. Gao Li, you saved me again, Tony muttered as he deactivated the phase transformation and trudged to the cliff edge. Why did it keep happening like this? He'd invited Gao Li along and failed to protect him, and Gao Li, so much younger, kept pulling him out of disaster. The confidence he'd shown earlier curdled into guilt and remorse. Tony called for a rescue helicopter and boarded it to sweep the cliffside. They hadn't been in the air long when the pilot shouted, "Look, it's a miracle." Tony peered out and his heart leapt. Gao Li was clinging to a small ledge on the rock face, alive, mostly scraped and shaken but waving. It wasn't a miracle. It was Shocker's covert preparations combined with Gao Li's Superman-like resilience that had saved him. The helicopter pulled up close enough to hoist Gao Li aboard. As they steadied, Tony surprised himself by throwing his arms around him. Gao Li froze, then hugged Tony back. No words were necessary. Tony's eyes were glossy, and Gao Li understood. He would never let this happen again. The trip ended there. Back in New York, they parted ways. And for a while, Tony didn't invite Gao Li out again. Worried, Gao Li called and learned Tony had gone into seclusion, upgrading the Iron Man suit and hunting for covert organizations worldwide. The playboy was gone. Urgency had replaced parties in his life. Tony had wasted no time sending out teams to retrieve wreckage and intel after the attack, but when they reached the battlefield, everything was gone, cleaned up with unnerving thoroughness. That level of battlefield erasure shifted Tony's understanding of the mysterious force's capabilities. Days passed. Tony stayed out of the public eye and stopped creating headlines. His absence itself became a story. Obadiah Stane, ever anxious to take control of Stark Industries, had already been scheming. He'd secretly colluded with the Ten Rings to eliminate Tony, only to watch Tony's Iron Man suit annihilate the terrorists in the Middle East. Furious and thwarted, Obadiah tried to buy the suit. Tony refused. Obadiah harassed him, then was stonewalled. He seethed but had a backup plan: replicate the suit. A team of Obadiah's engineers worked on a rival armor codenamed Ironmonger, heavier and tougher than Tony's suit. But the key problem remained power. They couldn't miniaturize an arc reactor like Tony had. Obadiah dug into Stark history and found a lead. Howard Stark had once worked with Anton Vanko on a miniaturized arc reactor. Anton's son, Ivan Vanko, was alive and a physicist mechanic in his own right, reportedly continuing his father's work. Obadiah tracked him down and proposed a partnership. "You and I both want Tony Stark gone. Why don't we cooperate? Get back what you deserve," Obadiah tempted. The arrangement fit perfectly. Ivan could supply arc reactor tech and build his own suit. Obadiah could provide resources. Soon 2 Ironmongers were born, one for Obadiah, one for Ivan. On a dark, windy night, they decided to strike. They infiltrated Stark Tower in their cold, glinting Ironmonger armor, red warning lights strobing through the lobby like blood. What they didn't know was Tony had tightened security after the last attacks. The intruder's stealth failed immediately. "Mr. Stark, we have an intrusion. Transmitting footage now." Tony heard the alert and felt a grin of contempt curl his lips. "Someone dared attack again? Did they think he was an easy mark? Perfect," he said. "Time to test the new armor." The sensors implanted in his quarters hummed, metal plates launched and whirred into place, assembling around him. Data scrolled across his HUD. Systems check complete. This was the new generation of the Iron Man suit he'd been building. Tony strode out, the suit flashing cold metal light like the armor of a modern war god. As Obadiah and Ivan stepped into the upper lobby, a column of flame descended from the ceiling and a blast of searing air hit them. "What? Discovered?" Both men flinched at the sight of Tony hovering in midair, laser beams crackling from his gauntlets like lightning. Without a word, Obadiah and Ivan split to either side to flank him. Obadiah's armor glowed with red electricity as he unleashed a brutal energy strike from his hands. Ivan lunged at Tony with his dual whip blades, aiming for vital points. "Bring it on," Tony said coolly, his Iron Man suit generating a dense energy field around him. Obadiah swung an energy sword, the blade's light slicing through the dimness. Sparks erupted where sword and beam collided, the room filling with the metallic scent of combat. Ivan steered the bulkier Ironmonger frame with surprising agility, its armored arms bristling with heavy energy cannons. Each shot shook the hall with destructive force. Tony countered with mobility and tech. He spat a jet of flame from his suit's flamethrower to force Obadiah back and darted through the air to avoid Ivan's cannon fire. But despite his speed, he couldn't suppress the sudden jolt of disbelief as he glimpsed their chests. Arc reactors? How is that possible? The building's lights flickered as the fight intensified. Fortunately, it was late and Stark Tower had no staff on site, Tony's only occupant most nights, so he could fight without worrying about bystanders. Still, the realization that these two wore arc reactors and armor comparable to the Ironmonger filled him with alarm. "Has his suit been upgraded again?" he cursed. "Stronger than the one in the Middle East." Obadiah roared and pressed the assault. He'd planned to crush Tony with the upgraded Ironmonger Ivan had built. Tony, somehow, had also upgraded his armor enough to match. Explosive energy tore open the hall's walls, bathing the room in a crimson wash. Tony weaved through columns and debris, punching and blasting at both attackers where he could. Ivan tried to exploit the Ironmonger's stealth systems to close the distance for a killing blow, but Jarvis was watching every angle and warned Tony in time. Tony's HUD locked onto Ivan, and he fired a concussive burst that shoved the heavy suit back. The fight turned into a fury of crashing impacts and flying fragments. Tony's reactors flared, his gauntleted blows hammering at the two suits, but the Ironmonger's bulk and armor absorbed most of the damage. The longer he fought, the more puzzled Tony became. This armor and the arc reactor, who are they? Did someone in Stark Industries steal my designs? The battle dragged on, both sides deploying everything they had. Smoke choked the air, wreckage carpeted the floor. At last, Tony collapsed to one knee, winded, while Obadiah and Ivan still stood. 2 against 1, no matter how much Tony's suit had improved, the odds were brutal. Ivan threw back his head and laughed. Before he killed Tony, he wanted him to know who he was. "Who do you think you are?" Tony drawled, trying to buy time. "I don't waste my breath on little names." The chuckle died from Ivan's face. "I am Ivan Vanko," he snarled. Your father stole my father's work, the arc reactor you're running on now, Tony snorted. I don't care to dig into my father's old messes, but he was a Stark. You expect me to believe he stole inventions? Show me proof. If you don't believe me, ask him. Ivan jabbed a finger toward Obadiah. Tony's gaze snapped to Obadiah. Of all the betrayals he'd feared, one by an executive he'd trusted the most hurt the most. Obadiah's expression hardened. Tony could see the cold calculation behind the words. Tony, you and your father are always leaving me to clean up the aftermath. Stark Industries belongs to someone responsible, someone who's kept this company running, not to a reckless showman like you. The blow hit Tony harder than any energy blast. Obadiah and Ivan raised their arms together. It's over, Tony Stark, Obadiah spat. At that moment, the hall's glass exploded inward. A motorcycle screamed through the breach and slammed into the room, doing a perfect tail whip to stop in a horizontal position between Tony and the two attackers. The rider kicked off the seat and stood, the machine translating into a strange armored form. Tony blinked and recognized him. Gao Li? Gao Li, on the autovasion, now transformed into Kamen Rider phase, rolled back his helmet's visor. You people are wrecking the place. Flames shooting up like that? Anyone with eyes could tell something's wrong. Tony opened his mouth to be embarrassed. He had just boasted about upgraded security, after all, but the arrival of a powerful ally was a welcome diversion. Be careful, he warned. I analyzed your fight footage in the tower. Impressive, but you won't match these two. Get me out of here, okay? Gao Li raised an eyebrow. Escape? I don't think so. Tony started to protest, but Gao Li cut him off. Why should I run from two pawns? Time to show you a real breakthrough. Ivan snarled at the interruption. Who are you? Get out. Don't interfere. Obadiah's eyes widened at the sight of Gao Li. The footage from that earlier Kamen Rider clash had been observed. The elder of the company had already traced the suit's capabilities. You, Gori Parker, you were the one who acted in Stark Tower before. Gao Li only smiled. You forget, I've got alien tech of my own. Since you're so curious, I'll let you see. He snapped a small watch-like device onto his wrist. The armor around him began to shift, clicking and sliding into a new configuration. He didn't disappear. He simply moved too fast to follow. In an instant, Tony's ears were sliced by the whine of air being split, and then 5 blood-red photonic drills flashed into existence, dancing at blinding speed around Ivan. Within each drill, figures blurred and then struck. Tony gasped. He had seen this move before, the Crimson Smash, but never like this. 5 consecutive strikes delivered almost simultaneously, and those photonic tubes, once crimson, had turned silver-white during Gao Li's transformation. An upgraded photonic blood system? Tony's mind raced through his own work on miniaturized reactors. Someone else had leapfrogged him with a new power source and delivery system. Gao Li's voice cut through the chaos. Start up! Time out! A towering pillar of flame and detonations engulfed Ivan. Obadiah never even had time to react before he staggered and collapsed, iron plating torn and scattered. Gao Li's attack had dismantled the ironmonger, his movements measured at speeds Tony could only describe as dozens of times greater than sound. Where the two suits had stood, only wreckage remained. Gao Li deactivated the extra systems with a mechanical chime. His armor slid back into its base form with a single faint electronic click. Since he's an old acquaintance of yours, I left him alive. No need to thank me, he said with a wink. Tony pushed himself upright, the dizziness fading. Around them, the hall smoked and groaned. Parts of Stark Tower had been seriously damaged, but the immediate threat was over. Jarvis chimed in softly, beginning damage assessments. Outside the shattered windows, the city continued to hum, oblivious to the calamity that had just unfolded within one of its most famous towers. To deal with a mere ironmonger, even an upgraded version, even 2 of them, Gao Li only needed to switch to accelerate mode. There was no need to use burst form. After all, a 1,000-fold acceleration is a dimensionality reduction level crushing blow for most opponents. Tony blurted out before remembering himself. Gao Li smiled. That was Kamen Rider Phase's accelerate mode. It lets me speed up 1,000 times for 10 seconds, reaching 50 times the speed of sound. Today's accelerate mode was no longer a secret trump card. It was simply one component of Gao Li's baseline abilities. He couldn't help but admire how far he'd come. Once accelerate mode had been his greatest advantage, now it was just one of many options. Compared with Gowley's calmness, Tony was stunned. Accelerate 1,000 times? 50 times the speed of sound? It sounded unscientific. Tony could imagine incremental improvements to weapons, armor, or flight, but 50 times the speed of sound? That was pure sci-fi. How could the mind keep up? What materials wouldn't shred or deform? How would you dissipate the enormous heat? What power source could handle that instantaneous output? It should explode. A dozen questions crowded his mind, but Tony knew Gao Li well. He didn't bluff about science. If Gao Li said he could hit 50 times Mach, he could. Besides, the fight had taken place in Stark Tower. Tony could analyze the telemetry afterward. No wonder even those with access to supreme evolution tech found 1,000-fold acceleration incredible. After the fight, Obadiah's resistance dissolved, and the cleanup fell to Tony. He spent the night reviewing the battle logs and reached the only possible conclusion. Gao Li hadn't been exaggerating. That new accelerate form really could hit 1,000-fold acceleration and reach 50 times the speed of sound in 10 seconds. What's the principle behind it? Tony scratched his head in frustration. He felt a twinge of defeat. Less than half a year ago, he had been the sharper debater, the one who knew the tech. Now that kid had become a technological powerhouse, Tony couldn't begin to understand. He was the adult, and Gao Li had saved him more than once. Great, I'm not some damsel. Why do I always get rescued by Gao Li? Even Tony's pride had to adjust, but it also lit a fire under him. He would build an Iron Man suit that could surpass a Kamen Rider. Across town at S-Shield, Nick Fury studied a dossier while a capable operative reported what she'd found. Gori Parker's parents died in an accident, she summarized. Legendo Noah, founder of the Yggdrasil Foundation, is a distant relative. Other distant relatives include Benjamin Parker, Mai Parker, and Peter Parker, but due to the remoteness of the relation, there was almost no contact between the families in the previous generation. That's not what I want, Fury interrupted. Is he a recruit for the initiative? Combat-wise, he's impeccable, Natasha said. More importantly, his scientific output is astonishing. During the Stark Tower attack, Gori Parker fielded what was essentially the most powerful individual equipment in the world at the time, until Stark made the Iron Man suit. But our latest intel shows his suit has made a quantum leap. He can accelerate to 50 times the speed of sound in a matter of seconds. At that speed, he's effectively unbeatable on Earth. Short of a nuclear bunker, no conventional force can stop him. Our analysts estimate this tech is at least 30 years ahead of world capability. Fury already understood that, which was why Natasha described him as having impeccable combat capability. So you think we should recruit him? Natasha shook her head. I don't think the Avengers Initiative will appeal to him much. He's a billionaire like Stark. Fury tapped the table. His temperament, he's not as difficult as Stark, right? That's true, but he's not hot-blooded or naive either, she answered. He's extremely rational. Words won't sway him easily. Fury nodded. I'll think about how to approach him. Someone like Gao Li, equal parts brains and brawn, was exactly what Fury didn't want to lose. Adding him to the initiative would mean not just funding, but a leap in combat capability, which would help persuade the World Security Council to allow the Avengers to operate independently. That conversation between Fury and Natasha soon turned into the intelligence file that landed on Gao Li's desk. Shocker had become a problem within S-Shield, and Fury was not above making moves. Gao Li laughed when he read it. Recruit him into S-Shield? He smirked. If S-Shield was a leak-ridden agency, and Shocker had already wormed its way in, then in practice, S-Shield might as well be his own subordinate. Recruit me? That's rich. One detail in the file did catch his attention, though. In his previous life, he knew he was a Parker, but his parents never mentioned much about relatives, and he'd never met any while growing up. In the US, Parker was a common name, no reason to assume relation just because of the surname. Still, the briefing suggested a possible distant kinship with Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Gao Li mused to himself that perhaps Peter could be considered a very distant cousin. Maybe he'd visit sometime. A few days later, Fury's plan to approach Gao Li took shape. Natasha would apply for a secretary position. Managing the Yggdrasil Foundation and a private organization like Shocker left Gowli little time for day-to-day business. He needed a secretary to handle the foundation's affairs. Gowli was largely a major shareholder and preferred to hire managers, so a secretary made sense. And if Fury wanted to put a talented agent close to him, Natasha was as professional as they came. It would be criminal not to use her. So Natasha submitted a resume and showed up as Natalie Smith. Gowli eyed her coolly. She was competent-looking and undeniably beautiful, but could she handle the work? Good, he said. These backlog documents are yours. File them properly and prepare a report for tomorrow. He waved toward the small mountain of papers he'd let accumulate while he buried himself in research and wandered off to the lab. Natasha blinked, already being handed important tasks before she'd even learned the coffee machine. This undercover job was going to be work-heavy indeed. She set to work. By midnight, hunched over the files, she froze when she read one title, Tianying Satellite Launch Plan. Time flew. Natasha slowly got used to being worked to the bone by Gowli. She grimaced. How did I get used to this? Exhausted from late nights, she reminded herself this was an undercover observation mission, to make contact with and watch Gowli. But he'd become a hermit in the lab who dumped everything on her. He'd given her raises, but she was supposed to be gathering intelligence, not just paperwork. Still, because she handled so much, Gowli hadn't had to hide much. Aside from kernel technologies beyond her understanding, she knew most of the Foundation's daily affairs. The Tianying satellite was meant to enhance Gowli's suit and carried an AI testbed. Gowli wanted to prototype a Zia-like intelligence, but his AI still came from an adaptation of the Kamen Rider G3X chip, powerful but far short of the computing heft of Zia. As for Gowli himself, he was basically a recluse. Natasha had tried to hack his systems to see what he did all day. Impossible. This isn't working. I can't observe Gori Parker properly, she thought. She considered revealing her identity, but as an agent, she had to check in. That night, she submitted the idea to S-Shield. Gowli approved the sham request at his end, and the directive came down. No, she must remain undercover. How could Gowli surrender such a useful resource? His order translated into S-Shield commands that pressed down on Natasha. She clenched her teeth. Fine, she'd endure. A few days later, an opportunity arrived. Military intelligence reported a rapidly escalating situation. A unit led by General Ross had been pursuing Dr. Bruce Banner, a genius scientist with multiple doctorates. An experimental accident allowed Banner to turn into a green behemoth, calling himself the Hulk, immense strength and near-endless power, but limited sanity. The military, trying to replicate that power in a former Special Forces commando named Emil Blonsky, botched the experiment. Emil didn't become their weapon. He became the rampaging monster abomination, laying waste to New York. Natasha, working late at the Yggdrasil building, heard a series of explosions and received the alert. The military's pursuit had spiraled out of control. The noises were abomination clashing with the military. What looked like disaster was, to Natasha, an excellent chance to observe Gori Parker in action. Section 120, the World Tree Building, was in Manhattan, and the area Abomination was tearing apart wasn't far from it. Even if it was only to protect his investments, Natasha was sure Gowli would act. As she predicted, Gowli soon got a call from Tony. Gowli, Manhattan's a mess. Want to save the world with me? Tony said. Gowli stood by a floor-to-ceiling window on a high floor, watching distant flames. What's the situation exactly? I'm on my way, Tony replied. From the cameras, it looks like two muscle-bound behemoths, one green and one gray, are fighting. The green one had to be Bruce Banner, Hulk. Gowli guessed as much. He paused to pick his words carefully. With your current Iron Man suit, don't do anything that'll get you accidentally killed, okay? Even when he tried to be subtle, Gowli still managed to needle Tony, and Tony raised an eyebrow. You just wait and see me heroically defeat the enemy, he shot back, then hung up, leaving Gowli momentarily speechless. Guilty conscience or pride, Tony wasn't about to back down. Gowli shrugged. Fine, I'll go take a look. Good chance to test burst form and collect data. If he felt confident he could handle the threat, Gowli wouldn't stand by and watch people suffer. On the ground, the two giants were wrecking the street like wild animals. Abomination, an immense, heavily muscled monster with a furious face, stood opposite the Hulk, whose green skin hid mountainous strength and boundless rage. The air buzzed with their presence. Abomination roared and lashed out. He slammed a massive fist down, sending the pavement trembling. The Hulk didn't go down. He swung his arms, creating a violent whirlwind of blows. The air twisted into a tornado aimed at Abomination. Buildings along the street took the brunt of the fight. Glass exploded into shards that stung ears. Cars were overturned. Reinforced concrete splintered. The Hulk and Abomination crossed the road again and again, each collision detonating in resonant bangs. The asphalt spidered with cracks, the whole city trembling under their battle. "Hulk, attack!" someone shouted. Hulk's rage only grew. He clamped both hands around Abomination's arms and threw him hard enough to crash through a small building, bringing it down in a cloud of dust. Abomination scrambled up from the rubble and charged again, angrier than before. The two plunged into brutal, close-quarters combat, punches and kicks that generated blasts of force, gusts that hurled debris and smoke into the air. "Die!" Abomination roared and swung again. "Hulk's not done!" the green giant bellowed, countering with a thunderous palm to Abomination's chest. Buildings along the street shook, windows burst, rubble rained down. Their muscles met with earth-shaking impact, and the intensity of the fight escalated. Each blow was like an explosion. Whole blocks collapsed, raising clouds of dust and flames as black smoke rolled up. In only a short time, the street had been reduced to a ruined wasteland. This was what Tony saw as he arrived. Even he, confident as he was, felt a sting of doubt. He'd upgraded his suits furiously after the Obadiah incident to keep up with Gao Li, but facing these two monsters, he felt comparatively weak. He muttered to himself, "Great, I talked too big in front of Gao Li." Still, he wasn't leaving. He hovered above the battlefield and called down, "Hey, you two big guys, listen up. I don't know if you get English, but if you're going to fight, take it to a desert or something. I'll take you on." Tony was trying to shift the fight away from the city, but neither Hulk nor Abomination had reasoned minds left. Abomination barked, "Little bug, scram!" The Hulk responded in kind with an angry roar. In no time, they both focused on Tony. He had a talent for drawing aggro. It was basically a built-in taunt. With his suit's speed and agility, Tony dodged massive fists, firing repulsors and missiles in a desperate attempt to weaken them. His attacks did little. "Why are all the enemies I face lately so tough?" he muttered, ducking another swing. Even when the blows only grazed his armor, the force shoved him back and strained systems. His suit fought to keep up with sustained overdrive. Jarvis warned that energy reserves were dropping, and the armor began to show severe damage. "There's no choice," Tony said through gritted teeth. "Jarvis, divert power, full output." He aimed everything at the Hulk. The overcharged assault momentarily dazed the green giant. Tony had a window. "Mr. Stark, reinforcements are inbound," Jarvis reported. "Latest suits are en route to the battlefield." Tony let out a breath and unleashed one final concentrated energy beam toward Abomination. The blast hit the creature in the chest, sending him tumbling and skidding along the street. Tony allowed himself a small, relieved smile as backup suits streaked in the distance. His relief was short-lived. The Hulk roared back to his feet and charged Tony from behind, slamming a palm into him with such force that Tony flew like a cannonball, crashing through several walls. His suit was shredded. Dazed, Tony's heart raced. If he'd been in one of his older suits, he would have been dead. A low engine whine filled the air, and a craft descended. Gao Li, now transformed into Kamen Rider Faiz, was dropped from the Victory Swallow. He'd already built Burst Mode and the Tianying satellite, and having constructed the Victory Swallow once, he'd set up production of it and other TPC tech. With his resources, mass production wasn't an issue. Tony disentangled himself from the ruined armor and just managed to get into a replacement suit as Gao Li landed. Tony scowled. "Okay, no more wisecracks. We're up against serious threats. Where did you learn those bad habits?" Gao Li gave him a level look. Tony changed tack. "We'll fight side by side. Try your accelerate mode and see what it can do against these two." Gao Li nodded. "Fine. The green one's yours, the gray one's mine." Tony blinked. "Why do I have to take the green one? Gray looks fine too. I hear green's an unlucky color in China." Gao Li's face was flat. Because someone's bound to die next. I picked the one who deserves it more. Tony was stunned by Gowley's confidence. The Hulk and Abomination were terrifying enough, yet Gowley sounded certain of victory. Tony had learned to trust him. Gowley didn't bluff. All right, if you can't handle it, don't push too hard, Tony warned, then drew the Hulk's attention and peppered him with laser fire. The suit couldn't go toe-to-toe with the Hulk, but Tony could act as bait and try to lure him away. Abomination, trying to chase Iron Man, ran into someone standing in his path. Gowley. Who's that? General Ross, who'd reboarded a nearby helicopter, squinted. His previous chopper had been shot down by Abomination. He'd been lucky the Hulk intervened, or he would have been gone. The reason the Hulk had helped was simple. Ross's daughter was Bruce Banner's girlfriend. If it came down to it, Ross had been saved for family reasons. That looks like Kamen Rider phase, one of his men said. Ross's gaze hardened. Gori Parker, he muttered with distaste. He didn't trust wealthy industrialists who interfered with military plans. After the Stark Tower attack, the military had desperately wanted Kamen Rider technology, but Tony Stark had blocked them at every turn. Stark Industries had fought the military's attempts, and even when Gori Parker was declared missing, his legacy, Kamen Rider tech, remained out of the military's grasp. Ross still resented that.